I get stronger by spending money in Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51, Tracking. In the dormitory, Alan and Eddie were talking about a wizard who has been in the limelight recently, Gilderoy Lockhart. He has published many books about dark magic creatures in the past 2 years, and is very popular. Of course, Lockhart's biggest selling point is his handsome appearance. But Joel said to himself that Lockhart was not as handsome as himself. Joel slipped into the bathroom, took out his vineward wand, and nodded his head without any instruction. Disillusionment charm. A cool breeze poured down from the top of his head, like a basin of cold water, and Joel got goosebumps all over his body and shivered. He looked at the mirror in the bathroom. There was only the shower, toilet, and toiletries behind him and the mirror, but he could not see himself. Joel moved his body quickly and began to jump left and right while focusing his attention on the mirror. Sure enough, at the moment he moved, he could still see a similar transparent object moving in the mirror, but as long as he stopped moving, his body would naturally blend into the surrounding environment. Chameleon. This was Joel's first reaction. Like this animal, the disillusionment charm can also change the color of the body surface as the environment changes. Joel practiced it 3 or 4 times in the bathroom and only returned to bed after confirming that it was foolproof. Alan and Eddie went to dinner together. Joel used abdominal pain to excuse himself and stayed in the empty dormitory to sort out his belongings. He stuffed some candies from Honeyduke's candy store and his only 60 gold galleons in his backpack, and then he stuffed the indestructible hammer in it just in case. The backpack became much heavier now. Joel lifted it and felt that the weight was moderate, so he zipped it up with confidence. On Saturday night, Joel came to the auditorium and saw Professor White sitting in the teacher's seat, stuffing a mouthful of food into his mouth from time to time, but his mind was obviously not on it, and his eyes were dazed. Joel's eyes were always on Professor White. This move was not outstanding. As long as Professor White came to the auditorium for dinner, many male students would keep their eyes on Professor White's beautiful cheeks. Eddie was even more affectionate. In this respect, Western children are indeed much more mature than Eastern children. Alan. Joel called. What's wrong? Alan looked up. I'm not going back to sleep tonight. Just lock the door of the dormitory. You're going. Alan wanted to ask him why, but felt it was too abrupt. I know. Professor White was obviously not in the mood to eat. After eating 2 bites, he got up and left. Joel stuffed 2 pieces of apple pie into his mouth and left quietly. He did not follow Professor White, but went to Ravenclaw Tower, picked up his backpack, bypassed the Black Lake first, and waited at the exit of Hogwarts. The high iron fence surrounded Hogwarts tightly, leaving only one gate for entry and exit. There was a copper lock on the gate. It was given a magic forbidden ability and could not be opened by the unlocking spell. The key was in the hands of Filch, the administrator of Hogwarts. Joel tapped his head with his wand, disillusionment charm. His body and backpack were hidden in the weeds beside the fence, and the place returned to peace. A quarter of an hour later, as night fell, Professor Claire White and Filch, who was holding a lantern and holding his beloved cat, came over together. The bushes beside the gate rustled. Mr. Filch, I'll be back on Monday morning. I'll have to trouble you to open the door then, Professor White said, holding a wooden box with a slightly apologetic tone. Filch shook his head. It's nothing, Miss White. Filch, who always had an expression of the whole world owes me gold galleons, rarely grinned, revealing 2 crooked front teeth. Professor White watched him walk forward with a hunched back, put down the lantern in his left hand, took out a bunch of keys from his waist and unlocked the door. See you on Monday, Mr. Filch. Professor White chuckled. The lower door frame of the gate was a bit high, and she felt a little weak when her right leg stepped over and landed on the ground. She lowered her body to the ground and stood up when her left foot also stepped over the door frame. Joel, who was hiding in the bushes beside the gate, saw Professor White go out, and he also held his breath and walked out with his bag on his back. Due to the disillusionment charm and the deepening night, Filch did not notice Joel passing by him. But Mrs. Norris seemed to sense something. turned her head in Filch's arms, looked at Joel's position and called softly. This scared Joel enough. Filch glanced around with a suspicious look, but there was nothing but darkness. Joel took advantage of the gap when Filch's eyes were diverted to speed up and slip out. At this time, Professor White had already walked out for a distance. Filch shook his head in confusion, locked the door, put away the key, picked up the lamp on the ground, and turned to leave. Joel let out a long breath. He knew that Mrs. Norris had discovered him through the smell. Fortunately, this cat could not speak, so he could slip out from between Filch's fingers. He took a breath and hurried to keep up with Professor White. After walking downhill for a while, Joel found that Professor White's right leg seemed to be a little inconvenient. Every time his right foot landed, it would lightly touch the ground, and his center of gravity would be placed on his left foot. This made his walking posture look very awkward. Injured? Joel frowned. He was glad that Professor White did not intend to use apparition to leave. She walked down the hillside and continued to walk forward. After passing the Hogwarts stop, there was a village not far ahead. The village was brightly lit, and it looked warm in the night. It was Hogsmeade Village. There were not only shops such as Honeydukes Candy Store in Hogsmeade Village, but also more wizard residences. Professor White carried a wooden box along the main road of the village and came to a two-story building in a remote part of the village. He took the key from his pocket, opened the door, and then strode in. The door was shut tightly. In order to prevent Professor White from noticing that he had been following her for 7 or 8 meters, Joel had no time to go in. He could only put his ear to the door and try to listen to the noise in the room. The soundproofing effect of the wooden door was not good. Joel could clearly hear a person's heavy cough, which was obviously not made by Professor White. Joel moved carefully, trying to move to the window to see the situation in the room. Suddenly, a man's voice came from the room. Joel stopped and held his breath. It was a language that Joel could not understand. It was Spanish, Portuguese, German, French. The man said a few words and immediately began to cough violently. Joel was worried that he would cough to death. Then he heard Professor White's voice. There was a bit of tremor in the voice, which was probably caused by emotional fluctuations. She also used that language, which made Joel a little irritated. He couldn't get any valuable information from the conversation. Please vote for recommendation. Chapter 52. Brown Bear, Tuberculosis, Ghost Woman and Child. 5 minutes later, Joel rubbed his sore knees. Now the only sounds in the room were the man's heavy breathing and a series of coughs from time to time. The coughs seemed to make him cough out all his internal organs before he could feel at ease. Joel frowned. Could it be that he had tuberculosis? It seemed that he would not get any new information. Joel walked around the house in the dark. Through the curtains, he could vaguely see the flowers in the windowsill vase that had dried up due to lack of water. He roughly memorized the appearance and location of the house and planned to stay at the Three Broomsticks Inn in Hogsmeade and come back to explore tomorrow morning. The effect of the disillusionment charm had mostly worn off. In the dark, Joel could already see his white arms. He slowly retreated before being discovered by Professor White. At this moment, he heard the creaking sound of branches being crushed in the woods behind him. Joel's steps froze. He quickly cast a new disillusionment charm on himself to hide his body in the surrounding environment. 2 middle-aged men with beards and sturdy bodies appeared in Joel's sight. In contrast to their bodies, their footsteps were light. They walked out of the weed-covered woods without making any sound. If it weren't for the slight sound of branches reminding Joel, he would not have had time to react. The 2 men were wearing brown mink coats, which made them look very bloated. They were like brown bears in the forest, crouching in the grass with sneaky expressions. Although the 2 men looked like characters in a domestic forest protection cartoon, Joel didn't dare to act rashly. The 2 men waved their wands and then spoke. Joel was 10 meters away from them, but he couldn't hear any sound. Joel knew that the 2 must have used some kind of soundproofing spell. He could only watch their mouths moving all the time. He tried to make his breathing low and gentle, curled up his knees, and hugged the wand in his hand. The 2 men did not stay there for long. After a brief conversation, they stood up and slowly walked towards the house. Their wands slid gently into the palm of their right hands. Their right arms tilted slightly, keeping 2 fingers away from their thighs, and their left arms were tightly pressed against the seams of their pants. The same movement of the two men made Joel conclude that they had received some special training. They were not Death Eaters under Voldemort. Those people were either being punished in Azkaban or lingering in corners. There were very few people as arrogant and domineering as the Malfoy family. They were not auras from the British Ministry of Magic either. Joel, who had read the original book, did not remember what professional training these auras had received. Where did these two people come from? The two men did not see Joel, who had cast the disillusionment charm. The two came to the two sides of the door, leaned against the wall, and made a gesture to each other. In Joel's perspective, they were like agents in Muggle movies. They discussed with gestures, pointed their wands at the door, and stepped down with their shoulders. The powerful spell combined with their strong bodies directly pushed the door open. The two rushed in directly, and Joel's heart tightened. The man in the room before was cursing loudly, and there were several whistling sounds of magic spells flying along with violent coughs. Joel's feeling of uneasiness increased sharply, and he quickly dodged and fell. The wall behind him was hit by the magic spell, and many stones fell from Joel's head and hit the school bag behind him. Fortunately, he dodged in time, otherwise he would have been smashed and bleeding. He got up and moved quickly to the window. At this time, a woman's scolding sounded in the room. It was Professor White. The battle inside became more intense, and the glass on the window was shattered. Joel could just pull open the curtains to see the situation in the room. It was a 2-on-2 wizard duel. Professor White and the middle-aged man who was suspected of having tuberculosis fought against the two wizards who looked like brown bears. The two brown bear wizards cooperated very well. They put all their main energy on Professor White and attacked her with magic spells one after another, without giving her time to rest and adjust. This was the first time Joel witnessed a wizard duel. His disillusionment spell was still on him. The four wizards fighting would not pay attention to the window at all, so Joel could enjoy the duel. The four wizards reacted very quickly. Their wands did not stop for a moment, and colorful lights representing various spells whizzed out from the tips of their wands. The spells collided with each other in the air, and the magic power overflowed. Joel could feel the crazy fluctuations of magic power in the air from 5 or 6 meters away. It was really exciting, just like watching a science fiction movie. But Joel did not forget his mandatory task. He saw that the two brown bear wizards were not very gentle on the tuberculosis man, just some disarming spells and coma spells, but they did not show any mercy to Professor White, and green light flashed by. The green light was deep and profound. Joel felt that his whole soul was about to be sucked away at a glance. Joel could recognize this spell, Avada Kedavra, one of the 3 unforgivable curses. The green light represents endless killing. It has taken away countless lives and is terrifying. They really want to kill Professor White, and Joel is a little impatient. The mandatory mission requires him to save Professor White's life. He can't afford to lose 40% of his memory. As long as he doesn't lose his life or become disabled, he will help Professor White no matter what. He only has one attack spell now, the petrification spell, which was taught to them by Professor Flitwick before Christmas. Joel also practiced it for a while, after refreshing his magic qualifications, and he is quite skilled in using it. He called up the system panel and scanned the column of spell learning. The only 60 gold galleons left on hand could not be exchanged for any powerful spells. He can only rely on himself. Joel shook off the gravel on the backpack, opened the zipper, and took out the indestructible hammer from it. He lifted it in his hand and tried to find the feeling of a paladin. He cast another disillusionment spell on himself, and this time the hammer became transparent as well. Then he held the hammer in his left hand and the wand in his right hand, and sneaked into the house through the main door. Avada Kedavra could not be blocked by the conventional defensive spell, armor, and bodyguard, and could only be blocked by transfiguration or dodged, which made Professor White's battle very difficult. The two brown bear wizards were very powerful, and she had to concentrate very much. Even so, it was still dangerous to deal with them. She had to roll on the ground from time to time to avoid the spell. The dust on the ground fell on her aqua blue robe, and she looked very embarrassed. Damn it. If it weren't for the restlessness and lack of sleep in the past few weeks that affected her energy, she would have been able to deal with it much more easily. She looked at her opponent's cold face and gnashed her teeth, wishing she could cut him into pieces. But the brown bear wizards didn't care about Professor White's expression. One of them used the disarming spell to repel the tuberculosis man next to him, and then the two of them attacked together in tacit understanding, and two deep green lights attacked Professor White. Professor White immediately waved her wand, and the vase on the windowsill flew over and collided with a killing curse in the air. Facing another killing curse, Professor White fell to the right to dodge. She did dodge the killing curse, but when she stood up, the hidden disease in her right leg broke out. Her right leg muscles twitched very obviously, and she couldn't stand up for a while. The brown bear wizard showed a mocking smile on his face. One of them was dealing with the tuberculosis man, and the other came forward with the wand in his hand, and the tip of the wand accumulated green light. Professor White showed a bitter smile on his face. The tuberculosis man's eyes were bloodshot, and he roared in an incomprehensible language. The green light burst out instantly, and Professor White's vision was filled with green, and everything returned to calm. Professor White turned his head. How could he still move? The bright light of Avada Kedavra gradually faded, and Professor White regained her sight. She saw that the brown bear wizard who wanted to kill her was full of astonishment, and the wand in his hand drooped weakly. The previous killing curse hit the floor under his feet, smashing a bowl-sized hole in the original wooden floor. He slowly fell forward, and behind him, a little boy who was breathing heavily was exposed to her sight, holding a hammer in his left hand, holding the wand tightly in his right hand, and there was still a little fear on his face. She recognized him. He was her student who had helped her not long ago, Joel Taylor, a first-year student at Ravenclaw College. I went to the community to help distribute masks today. I will definitely update twice tomorrow. Definitely. Chapter 53, Spare his life. Joel held the hammer in his hand. Because he was a little weak, his face was as pale as the joints of his left hand. His heart was beating wildly and violently, as if it was going to jump out of his chest. He watched the brown bear wizard in front of him slowly collapse to the ground. His beating heart gradually calmed down, and his forehead was sweating. The hammer just now used up all the strength in the body of this 11-year-old boy. The back of the brown bear wizard's head was opened by him. This was the first time in his 2 lives that he used a hammer to hurt someone. He was inevitably a little excited. He felt that the holy light was protecting his body for a while, and he had a sense of mission to destroy you on behalf of the holy light. The other 3 people present stopped their actions and looked at Joel in surprise. No one could have expected that the balance of this duel would be hit by an 11-year-old boy with a hammer. The brown bear wizard looked at his companion who fell to the ground and roared, which scared Joel. He looked at the magic wand in the hand of the brown bear wizard. Joel raised the wand in his hand quickly, but before he could cast a spell, 2 red lights hit the brown bear wizard one after another. The wizard's copper bell-sized eyes flashed a trace of confusion, and then fell heavily to the ground. Professor White and the tuberculosis man breathed a sigh of relief, looking at the 2 brown bear wizards lying on the ground, but the wands in their hands did not stop. 2 iron chains as thick as forearms emerged from the tips of the 2 wands, binding the 2 brown bear wizards tightly. Then Professor White struggled to get up from the ground, curled up his right leg, limped forward and snatched the wands from the 2 brown bear wizards. Joel loosened his hand, and the hammer fell to the ground with a clang, and the whole person collapsed on the ground. The middle-aged tuberculosis man pointed his wand at Joel. He coughed desperately, his tired and wrinkled face flushed red, and his face was full of suspicion and distrust. What do you mean? Is it aimed at me? Why didn't I cough you to death? Joel thought bitterly, and Professor White walked up to the tuberculosis man and said a lot of words. The tuberculosis man glanced at Joel and finally put down his wand, went to the side, and poured a glass of ice water and drank it. The coughing became more intense. Are you okay? Professor White asked with concern. She came to Joel and sat down with 3 wands in her hand. Joel shook his head. He just ran out of strength, and there was nothing wrong with his body. His attention has been on the system panel, and no system prompts have appeared until this moment. This means that the mandatory task has not been completed, and Professor White is still in danger of his life. Could it be that the 2 brown bear wizards lying on the ground must be killed? Joel thought about it, and his face was fierce and his eyes were unfriendly. Why are you here? Professor White did not notice that there was something wrong with Joel's eyes. She was more curious about the reason why Joel came here. During the questioning, her wand never stopped. Colorful spells passed through the door and bloomed in the sky like colorful fireworks. The fireworks turned into a transparent protective film and appeared in the starry sky, gradually spreading and spreading, intending to cover the house. Joel listened to Professor White's question, and his brain turned quickly. Ms. Marchbank of the Ministry of Magic asked me to meet at the Three Broomsticks in Hogsmeade tonight to discuss the publication of books. As he spoke, he observed Professor White. Sure enough, when he heard about the British Ministry of Magic, Professor White's expression was very unnatural. Jolton felt relieved and continued. Someone told me that there is a secret passage from Hogwarts to Hogsmeade. I didn't expect that when I just arrived in the village. I saw two men sneaking to a remote place, so I used an invisibility charm. He didn't need to tamper with the facts later and explained them one by one. In just a short moment, Joel's agile brain allowed him to quickly sort out the current situation. In the previous duel, the two brown bear wizards obviously held back on the tuberculosis man. It seems that the tuberculosis man is very important to them and should be the target of the two. Professor White obviously has a special relationship with the tuberculosis man. The tuberculosis man looks very sick, but he does not go to St. Mungo's Hospital for magical injuries and diseases for treatment, which makes people suspicious. Why doesn't a foreigner who speaks a foreign language and has tuberculosis go to the hospital? Looking at Professor White's fatigue for several weeks in the house without anyone guarding it, Joel deduced the conclusion. The tuberculosis man sneaked into the UK, and the two brown bear wizards were a secret organization that came to capture the tuberculosis man and bring him back to the country. There must be some unknown secrets. Therefore, Joel deliberately brought up the British Ministry of Magic at the beginning to test Professor White's attitude. After he finished speaking, Professor White really stopped pursuing the question of how did Joel appear here, which further confirmed Joel's speculation. The protective film she had arranged before had completely covered the house. Professor White felt relieved and simply rolled up her trouser legs, revealing a wound with pus. The blood flowing out of the wound was black and looked quite scary. There was some green powder on the wound. She took out a small bottle from her pocket, uncorked it and poured some more powder on the wound. It was probably because of some irritating ingredients in the medicine. When the powder touched the wound, Professor White's right leg shrank. Joel's eyes swept over Professor White's straight and slender calves, and then shifted his gaze to admire the bright moonlight outside the window. His sight was intercepted in the middle. The middle-aged man with tuberculosis had a gloomy face and looked at Joel with an unusually gloomy look. Joel stared back in confusion. You look at me? Then I look at you too. Professor White treated the wound and rolled down his trouser legs in a casual manner. She pointed the wand in her hand at Joel. Relax, you will forget everything that happened tonight. Professor White whispered softly. Joel's face changed. He knew what Professor White wanted to do, the oblivion spell. He didn't want to surrender like this. The moment he picked up the hammer, Professor White's wand was already against his forehead. Don't move, Mr. Taylor, Professor White said. The oblivion spell can be a very dangerous spell. If I accidentally delete something in your mind, that shouldn't be deleted. She said it with a hint of threat. Joel didn't dare to act rashly and gently put down the hammer in his hand. The heartbeat that had just calmed down began to beat violently again. Professor White's originally beautiful long red hair now looked as dangerous as flames in Joel's eyes. Just as the white light accumulated at the tip of Professor White's wand was about to shoot out, Joel suddenly shouted loudly, "Spare his life. Please vote for recommendation." The second update will be at 9 o'clock. Chapter 54, The Eternal Night People from the Far North. Professor White's oblivion spell was ready to be used, and Joel's forehead was covered with sweat again. He looked at Professor White. I have a way to help you get rid of the brown bear wizard. Brown bear? Professor White looked at the two people lying unconscious on the ground, his eyes lingering on their mink coats for a moment, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Interesting nicknames. Joel pointed at the consumptive man. You want to hide him from everyone and let him live in seclusion here, right? You surprised me so much, Mr. Taylor. Professor White's eyes were tinged with coldness. First, the new difficulty disillusionment spell, and then the clever reasoning. You don't behave like an 11-year-old child. I grew up in an orphanage. Since I was a child, it's normal for my mind to mature a little precociously, right? Joel pretended to be calm and didn't change his face. Before using the oblivion spell on me, don't you want to hear my plan? He wanted to seize this opportunity. Anyway, it won't be a loss. He now has no hope of retaining his memory, but he wants to help Professor White hide the consumptive man. As long as the tuberculosis man is safe, Professor White is safe, Joel's mandatory mission will be completed, and he himself will be safe. In Joel's perspective, the three of them are now grasshoppers tied to a rope. Professor White took the wand from Joel's forehead, but she did not forget to stretch out her long legs to kick the indestructible hammer away from Joel's hand, and then took his wand away. Joel sorted out the thoughts in his brain, and seeing Professor White's impatient expression, he quickly said, "You can forge a death certificate, a tombstone or a coffin or something, so that those brown bear wizards will mistakenly believe that he is dead. The brown bears will naturally leave if they can't find him, and you will be safe." Professor White laughed like a beautiful and blooming thorny rose. "First of all, let me state that there are no brown bears. Their organization is called Eternal Night People. They are the guards of the Soviet Ministry of Magic. They are well trained and good at assassination and lurking. Soviet Union." Joel quickly linked the Eternal Night People with the famous KGB in the Muggle world. "Secondly, faking your death is useless." Professor White walked to the side of the tuberculosis man, rolled up his black robe, and there were two crossed black wands tattooed on his left forearm. The Eternal Night People have branded him, and their leader can sense the life and death status of everyone. Then she sighed. "Forget it. It seems that I have overestimated you. You are just a child, and it is not my intention to drag you into this vortex. Finally, I still want to thank you for saving my life." Professor White raised his wand again. "I saved your life. Why are you still so cold and ruthless?" Joel complained wildly in his heart. But before Professor White could cast the forgetfulness spell, the transparent protective film outside the house suddenly made a sound like glass breaking. In the silent night, the three awake people heard this crisp sound. Professor White's face changed drastically, and his body turned around and aimed outside the house. There stood a middle-aged man wearing a brown mink coat. His face was cold and his eyes were calm. The magic wand in his hand poked a hole in the transparent protective film. The protective film began to crack from this small hole and broke apart in a moment. The moment the tuberculosis man saw the middle-aged man, he began to mutter in a panic and waved his magic wand around. Professor White grabbed Joel with one hand and the tuberculosis man with the other hand. He turned around and tried to apparate away. Seeing this, the middle-aged man shot a deep purple light from his magic wand and hit Professor White. Joel's eyes were spinning, and he felt that his body was being pulled to another space. At the moment he was about to leave, he heard Professor White groan, which seemed extremely painful. After a strong pulling feeling, he finally stepped on the soft soil. When he landed, he was unstable and fell directly to the ground. The unique mixed smell of soil and weeds rushed into his nose. This is a forest, and the trees around are tall and strong, about the thickness of a person's embrace. "Hurry up, we need to find a safe place to spend the night." It was Professor White's voice, trembling slightly but with an indescribable strength. Joel turned his head and saw Professor White covering his right arm. The robe cloth that originally wrapped his upper arm disappeared, exposing his fair skin and fine wounds oozing blood. A piece of flesh was cut out in the middle, and the wound looked quite scary. "You need white fresh," Joel said. The tuberculosis man who couldn't speak his language also understood that he needed treatment at this time. He coughed violently and took out a transparent glass bottle from his pocket, which was filled with white fresh essence. Professor White reached out and snatched the glass bottle, pulled out the cork with his mouth, and steadily and quickly applied white fresh essence to the wound twice with his left hand. He simply spread it on the wound with his hand. When she accidentally touched the wound, her beautiful eyebrows would frown tightly. "Fortunately, I was not hit by the spell, otherwise it would not be so simple. It's just that I hurriedly accelerated the process of apparition and caused the split." Professor White put the cork on the bottle and put the glass bottle away. "Let's find a place to stay first, and then carefully treat the wound." After saying that, she limped to the front and the tuberculosis man and Joel followed silently behind her. Professor White's ability to survive in the wild is very strong. She observed the stars in the sky, the direction of the hillside and the moisture of the soil, and soon found a hidden cave with a water source. The three of them huddled in the cave, and did not dare to light a fire, for fear of attracting others. Professor White used fluorescent flashes to bandage the wound with sporadic light. "Now I can't cast a forgetfulness spell on you." Professor White smiled bitterly. "We probably have to stay in the woods for a day or two." Joel said nothing, his eyes fixed on the wand in Professor White's hand. Professor White understood and threw Joel's wand over. Joel held the wand like a talisman. "This is Konstantin Belli, from the Soviet Union." "No, Georgia, my father." Professor White introduced the tuberculosis man to Joel. Then Professor White, "Your last name?" Joel was a little confused. "White." Belly also means white in Russian. The amount of blood loss before was a bit too much, causing Professor White's face to be pale. "The alias I used when I came to Hogwarts. My real name is Claire Constantine Belli." Constantine didn't understand English. He watched his daughter chatting with Joel, his thick eyebrows tightly knitted together, and he covered his mouth and coughed twice. "Who was the man who appeared at the end?" Joel asked like a machine gun. "Why did the Eternal Night people capture your father? What did he do?" Second update. Please recommend. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55. The whole story. Professor White and Constantine looked at each other, and then they started talking in Russian again, while Joel was confused. Constantine was angry, waving his hands in the air, while Professor White was much calmer. Their eyes passed over Joel's face from time to time, and their tone became more and more excited. Joel looked at the veins on the neck of the tuberculosis man, and felt that the father and daughter were arguing. Just like an opera, after a short climax, the voices of Professor White and his daughter sank. Joel judged from their emotions that Professor White had won. The tuberculosis man leaned against the wall of the cave without saying a word, with his eyes closed. Professor White's gaze stayed on his father for a moment, and then turned his head. "We discussed it, and decided to tell you the whole story. That man is the leader of the Eternal Night, Andrei Ulyanov." Professor White also leaned against the wall with her long legs stretched straight. Her right arm was bandaged, and she could not move easily. The Soviet Ministry of Magic claimed that his strength was not weaker than Albus Dumbledore. "My father was also a member of the Eternal Night, but he was not in the combat sequence, but specialized in studying attack spells," Professor White said softly. "Not long ago, my father developed an unprecedented powerful spell with extremely strong lethality. The Soviet Ministry of Magic and the Eternal Night hope that my father will hand over the specific method of using the spell. But a month ago, Lithuania and Georgia announced their separation from the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union is now in chaos. My father didn't want to tell them the spell. He was afraid that the Soviets would take the opportunity to retaliate against his motherland, Georgia, and ignite a war. Under the persecution of the Eternal Night, my father had to leave the Soviet Union. During the escape, my mother from France died in the pursuit of the Eternal Night. My father was also seriously injured. Although the external injuries were cured, the root of the disease was left in his body and he coughed all day long. So that's it. Joel thought in his heart, and Professor White's fatigue in class in recent weeks was explained. Now the three of us are grasshoppers tied to the same rope. Miss White's words made Joel feel very familiar. Andre remembered your appearance. He will definitely not let you go. This is the code of conduct of the Eternal Night. That's right. Grasshoppers on rope, whether from the perspective of life or mandatory tasks, the three of them are now firmly tied together. Even if you return to school later, you must be careful when you see the Soviets. The power of the Eternal Night is spread all over the world, not weaker than the Aura Special Operations Department under the Magical Congress of the United States. They are known as the most powerful wizarding organization. Professor White took this opportunity to popularize Joel's knowledge of the magical world. It suddenly rained outside, and the drizzling rain slid down the hillside and merged into the stream beside the cave. The rain will erase our traces, which is good news. Professor White sighed softly. Let's sleep here for one night, and we will set off again tomorrow morning. According to Professor White's arrangement, Constantine and herself will take on the task of keeping watch tonight. Joel lay on his side with his back to the cave in trance. The muscles that were tense due to excitement before relaxed slightly, and the sour feeling swept through his body. The body instinctively produced sleepiness and urged him to sleep, but Joel forced himself to sort out what happened tonight. He had expected the possible changes before coming to carry out this mandatory mission, but he never expected it to be so dangerous. The Soviet Union, the Eternal Night, Constantine, Andrei, a bunch of unexpected information hit his mind. Being immersed in the scene, the magical world he was in was much more magnificent than what was described in the original plot. The contradictions in this world were far more than the opposition between Voldemort and the British wizarding world. What lay before Joel was the disintegration of the Soviet Union. Now it was more than 7 months away from December 25, 1991, the day when the Soviet Union collapsed. The construction of Rome was not a one-day effort, and the collapse of the Soviet Union was not a one-day effort. The wizarding world and Northern Europe had already been undercurrents. Joel was also accidentally involved in this torrent. The leader of the Eternal Night, Andrei, came in person, which made Joel believe that the spell mastered by Constantine was priceless. He did not ask Professor White why she did not ask Professor Dumbledore and the Ministry of Magic for help. She must have some concerns about doing so. Facing a powerful and unknown enemy, Joel couldn't help but retreat in his heart. Is it too early for him to face such a challenge at the age of 11? In his first year, Harry Potter faced Quirrell, who was half crippled and possessed by Voldemort, and a group of professors were there to protect him. Can he really help Professor White escape the pursuit of the Eternal Night? Or just give up the side quest and leave directly? He did his best, didn't he? At least he saved Professor White once with a hammer. 40% of his memory is not something that cannot be abandoned in front of his own life. No matter how miserable his life was in his previous life, he never worried about his life. Facing the danger of his life at this time, Joel couldn't help but retreat. Suddenly he reached out and pinched his thigh hard, cursing his cowardice and timidity in his heart. If he wants to run, will those Eternal Night people let him go? Will he end up like Constantine in the end? Going to a foreign country, his wife died, he was seriously injured, and he had to beware of the pursuit of the Eternal Night people. Thinking of this, Joel was furious. The reckless Avada Kedavra of the Eternal Night people had already made him subconsciously disgusted with this organization. Then he looked at the three of them huddled in the cave in a miserable state. This is too much. He will definitely save Professor White. He turned over, and the muscles all over his body were protesting. I have a suggestion. I wonder if it is feasible. Tell me about it. Professor White was looking at the rain curtain outside the cave. He turned his head with interest when he heard Joel's words. Constantine, who was resting with his eyes closed, also opened his eyes. Let's do this. Joel hooked his hand to signal, and the three of them put their heads together. He expressed his idea. After hearing this suggestion, Professor White immediately rejected it. No, it's too dangerous. After listening to his daughter's translation, Constantine nodded frequently, and his gloomy eyes became lively. Obviously, he thought Joel's idea was feasible. Professor White, we don't have a better solution, right? Joel spread his hands. It's unrealistic for you to flee aimlessly like this. Besides, I'm different from you. I have Hogwarts to take refuge. Professor Dumbledore will never let his students be hunted down by foreign forces. Joel analyzed. He planned to use the 36 stratagems, substituting one thing for another. Please vote for recommendation. Chapter 56. Facing Your Fears. Professor White, who had no other choice, looked at her father's eager eyes and finally nodded in agreement. She lowered her head and looked directly into Joel's clear and innocent eyes. Promise me that you will pay attention to your own safety. Okay. Joel chuckled. Constantine's lips trembled, and he stretched out a withered left hand and patted Joel's shoulder. He was full of gratitude, but couldn't say it. It was not because he was introverted and not good at expressing his feelings, but because he could not speak English. There was no conversation that night. The next day, Joel woke up and felt that the muscles all over his body were like being repeatedly crushed by heavy objects, sore and weak. The drizzle outside had stopped, and the air was still moist and fresh. Constantine was leaning against the wall and taking a nap. The relaxation of his neck muscles caused his head to droop from time to time. Professor White sat at the entrance of the cave and looked at the woods outside, with his left hand still tightly holding the magic wand. Joel gritted his teeth and climbed up from the ground. The wet and uneven ground was really not suitable for sleeping, especially for a child like him who was still growing. Stretching, the bones made a crackling sound. Professor White turned her head, and Joel discovered the bloodshot in her eyes. After waking up Constantine, when the first rays of sunlight in the morning shone on Joel's handsome face, the two grabbed Professor White's arm and apparated out of the cave. Stepping on the cobblestones of Diagon Alley, Joel did not stop and took the two to Nocturne Alley according to the route he remembered. There were not many people shopping in Diagon Alley in the morning. Most of the pedestrians were shop assistants who came to open for business, and Nocturne Alley was no exception. The group soon saw Borgin and Burke's store, and the skull on the store sign was green. Is Nocturne Alley very weird? The three of them were silent along the way, which made Joel feel very depressed, and he had to take the initiative to open the topic. Nothing special. Constantine looked around and passed it to Joel through Professor White's translation. The black magic shop in Moscow is much more spectacular than this one. Spectacular. Joel did not comment on this adjective. Joel pushed open the door of Borgin and Burke's shop. The owner, Borgin and Burke, was standing in front of the counter, wearing his pince-nez glasses, and examining a human hand. The hand was dry and black, with long and sharp black nails, which looked weird. Mr. Borgin and Burke, long time no see. Joel stretched out his fingers and tapped the counter gently. Borgin and Burke looked up and was a little surprised when he saw Joel. Oh, Mr. Taylor, what a rare guest. His sinister eyes swept over Professor White and Constantine beside him and lingered slightly on Professor White's bandaged right arm. I came here to buy two things. Joel took it all in and then said softly. After listening to Joel's request, Borgin and Burke's withered face like tree bark showed an ugly smile. Wrinkles piled up, and the unique light of gold galleons flashed in his eyes. This transaction cost Professor White most of his hard-earned savings, and the generous gold galleons made Borgin and Burke happy for the whole day. Professor White's residence in Hogsmeade Village. The leader of the Eternal Night, Andrei Ulyanov, had a cold face. He closed his eyes tightly and rolled up his left arm to reveal two crossed wands. This was the unique mark of the Eternal Night. He gently tapped the mark with the wand in his right hand, and the wand and the mark glowed dimly together. This posture was maintained for a long time. The two sturdy Eternal Night people stayed in the corner of the room, not daring to breathe. One of the Eternal Night people had a bandage on his head. He was hit hard by Joel's hammer last night. Finally, Andre moved his wand away from the mark and slowly opened his eyes. Give me the map. The two people on the side hurried forward and put the map in Andre's hand. Andre gently drew a circle on the map with his wand, and a black ink mark circled a forest. Constantine is in the circle. I can't confirm his exact location. You two should act together and notify me immediately if you find him, he said lightly. This operation cannot afford to fail. He glanced at his two men, who shuddered visibly. We don't have much time left. The two men left the room and the apparition under his arrangement, leaving him alone. He sighed at the empty room, feeling melancholy and distressed. After the two Eternal Night people left, they used the apparition many times to hurry on their way. Not long after they arrived at the circle area, they found the traces of Constantine and his daughter. Strange, could it be that the area divided by the leader was too small? The two used stealth skills to move forward. After confirming that it was Constantine, they immediately tapped the mark on their arms with their wands, called Andre, and then stepped forward to hold him. Andre sat in a chair with his eyes closed to rest, and suddenly he felt a heat on the mark on his left arm. Found it so quickly? Andre was a little suspicious. Although the area he had circled was not large, Constantine would not be stupid enough to show up outside, right? In his imagination, Constantine should be hiding in a dark corner with his daughter. Although he suspected that his men might have accidentally touched the mark, he still stood up and disappeared from the spot with a turn. He could sense the approximate location of his men through the burning wand mark, which was in the area he had circled. The distance was a little far, and he needed 4 or 5 apparitions to reach it. It should be noted that apparition is not free to go to any place in the world. First of all, some areas with anti-apparition bans are not allowed to pass. Hogwarts is one of them. Secondly, the magic spell of apparition, which shuttles through space, has very demanding requirements on magic power. The distance of appearance and the consumption of magic power increase exponentially. If the distance of a single appearance is 1 mile, the magic power consumed is 1, but the magic power consumed for a single appearance of 5 miles is not 5, but 50. In order to save magic power, many wizards will choose to make multiple short distance appearances instead of going directly to the destination. Andre did the same. The mess in the Soviet Union made him very busy. The long-term overdraft made his body far less powerful than it was in his heyday. When he arrived at the destination, 2 minutes had passed since the mark began to burn. There were 3 people confronting each other in the woods, the bandaged Evernite man and Constantine's father and daughter. Another Evernite man was lying on the ground unconscious. "Where is the little boy?" Andre asked softly. He saw that Professor White's injured right arm was bleeding. It seems that his subordinate is not without action. "Chief, you are finally here. I don't know where the boy went. When we found the target mission, there were only the father and daughter." The Evernite man was very excited when he saw Andre, and the strong muscles hidden under the mink coat were trembling. Andre frowned and raised his hand to stop him behind him. "Leave this to me, and don't worry about the rest," he said in an unquestionable tone. "Hand over the spell." Andre turned to look at Constantine. "You can't run away. I will catch you even to the ends of the earth. Please recommend." Thanks to 2019082421441269 for the 500 starting coins reward. Thanks to the God of Books Ain't for the 2000 starting coins reward. Chapter 57. There is a traitor in our team. Give up this idea, Andre. Constantine shook his head. "I will never, let you use this spell to harm my motherland." Andre's thick eyebrows were tightly locked together. "I have repeatedly promised that I will never take action against Georgia." Constantine sneered. "So your target is Lithuania. I can't forget the Afghan war you launched in 1979. Constantine shouted hoarsely. "What did you promise when you took office? You don't understand the situation at that time, Constantine." Andre shook his head slightly and slowly took a step forward. "I had no choice." "Back off." Constantine shouted in a shrill voice, raised his wand, and pointed it at Andre, his fingers trembling constantly, and his inattention reached its peak. Andre no longer wasted words. He waved his wand vigorously and cast spells at Professor White. In his opinion, Professor White was much stronger in combat than her father, who was doing theoretical research on spells. Professor White's right arm was injured, and he could not move. He did not dare to take Andre's attack head-on, so he could only dodge in a hurry. He inevitably rolled on the ground a few times, and was covered with weeds, looking miserable. Constantine took the initiative to step forward to share the pressure of his daughter, but it was useless. Andre's spell was fast and accurate, and he had no pressure to fight Constantine and his daughter alone. "Hand over the spell, and I can spare your lives." Andre once again accelerated the rhythm of the attack, and even waved the magic wand in his hand. Constantine and his daughter were defeated and retreated step by step. Andre's spell continued to chase them mercilessly. Professor White could not react in time, and was about to be hit by the spell. Constantine hurried forward to block the attack. He used 2 armor spells to block Andre's main attack, but his abdomen was still hit by a knife-cutting curse. A lot of blood seeped through the black robe, and the weeds under his feet were stained with blood beads, which looked seductive and weird. Andre looked at the weak Constantine and his daughter, and stopped the magic wand in his hand. "Dream on, Andre." Constantine sneered, holding his belly, and leaned against the tree behind him. "The Soviet Union is on the decline, and there is no room for salvation. What have you done for your unrealistic dream over the years?" Constantine asked in a questioning tone. You launched a purge within the Ministry of Magic and executed many colleagues and subordinates who disagreed with you? My wife is just an ordinary employee of the Ministry of Magic's Transportation Department. She knows nothing about the Eternal Night people. What did you do to her? Constantine coughed violently, and countless blood flowed from his fingers, forming a dark red stream on the ground. After a night of Cruciatus curse, she begged you countless times, but you refused to let her go. Professor White lowered his head slightly, looking sad. Andrew put his hands behind his back and sighed. Someone will definitely sacrifice on this road. I admit that my previous actions were a bit extreme, but that was also for the strength of the Soviet Union. Then die with your Soviet dream. Constantine roared. After experiencing this series of events, he only had resentment and hatred for this alliance. He stepped forward, his face was hideous, and the wand in his hand burst into a strong red light. It was too slow, and Andrew was disdainful. When he was about to wave his wand to block the spell, he suddenly heard a shout from behind. Thunder explosion. It was the voice of the Evernights men. He could obviously solve it, so why did he come to mess with it? For a moment, Andrew's mind turned 1,000 times, and when he reacted, the extremely lethal spell had already come behind him. He had no choice but to dodge, but he never expected that the thunder explosion was crooked from the beginning. The explosion spell shot at the tree trunk next to it, and the whole tree exploded from the middle, and the leaves and branches flew wantonly in the air. The roar of the explosion caused Andre to be temporarily deaf. In this brief moment, a dagger pierced through his mink coat and stabbed straight into his lower abdomen. Andre looked back in disbelief and saw his men pulling out the dagger with their left hands, bringing out a pile of blood and raising their elbows to hit him hard in the face. All this stunned him, and he couldn't figure out the situation. What does it mean? Is there a traitor in our team? The bandaged Evernight man waved the dagger in his left hand, and the cold light was compelling. His close combat skills were outstanding. Although he fought with one hand, his elbow, wrist, palm, and dagger in his hand were very well coordinated. Every swing of his arm would leave Andre with injuries. Andre's eyes were red, and the magic power in his body burst out without reservation, directly knocking the Evernight man in front of him 7 or 8 meters away, crashing into a tree, and the leaves rustled. But Constantine's attack came from behind again. He didn't even have time to breathe. He kept waving his wand, stimulating the magic power in his body, while also aggravating his physical injuries. Although seriously injured, Constantine was still no match for Andre, and fell down in 2 rounds. Who are you? Andre covered his stomach, and lay on the ground weakly looking at Professor White. She was the only one still standing in the woods. The wound on his abdomen was very hideous. A section of his intestines drooped to the ground. Countless blood dyed the grass under him red. The wounds of all sizes all over his body made him look very miserable. Professor White's mouth curled up, revealing a successful smile. Her flamboyant red hair fluttered in the wind, looking bad and beautiful. She walked to Andre's side and picked up the dagger on the ground. Andre saw that the dagger that attacked him was actually a little green, obviously poisoned. This is a dagger covered with poison. Professor White suppressed the urge to lick the dagger and chuckled. You should be sore all over now, and you can't even gather your magic power, right? You. Andre understood Professor White's English. He tried it, and really couldn't feel the magic power in his body. Now he was just like those muggles, and with his serious injuries, he couldn't threaten anyone else at all. Professor White went to the side to help the Evernight man who fell to the ground. The 2 of them came in front of Andre and kept rubbing their cheeks. The cheeks kept changing shape, and their bodies began to squirm wildly. The mink coats and black robes on the 2 of them were drooping loosely, and they looked a little too fat. The previous Professor White turned out to be Joel Taylor, the little boy, and the Evernight man became the real Professor White. Heh. Andre looked at the faces of the 2 and laughed miserably, feeling that he had been tricked. I have been hiding behind Constantine with the disillusionment charm. The moment your 2 men landed, I attacked them with a dagger. Professor White used the Polyjuice potion to replace the appearance of one of them, and I became Professor White. Joel smiled innocently. After all, Professor White's right arm was injured before, so it is reasonable that his combat power is a little weak, right? Please recommend. According to the data last week, there should be +4 more chapters, a total of 8 chapters, and they are available for supplementation. Chapter 58, Ending. Indeed, when Andre saw the bandage on Professor White's right arm, he had no doubt why Professor White did not organize a counterattack. In other words, he was too confident in his own strength. He thought that Professor White should flee in panic on the ground, but he did not expect that someone would take this opportunity to counterattack him. Who came up with this idea? Andre spoke English with a Russian accent. Professor White said in Russian. Was he surprised? I was also shocked last night. Professor White looked at Andre's surprised expression. This doesn't look like an 11-year-old child, right? At such a young age, he can formulate such a meticulous plan, and he can also cast spells such as the disillusionment charm. Andre muttered to himself, it seems that Britain is going to have another Albus Dumbledore. Joel blinked and looked at Professor White. He didn't understand the Russian that Andre said. Professor White did not translate what he meant. She said in a cold tone, Andrei Ulanov, you have fallen into our hands today. Andrei kept silent. Constantine got up from the ground and came to the front of several people, coughing up a mouthful of blood. Father, are you going to kill him? Constantine shook his head. No, I want him to see with his own eyes how the Soviet Union is heading for destruction. He said in a hateful tone. I don't believe that the Soviet Union will disappear from this world. I don't believe it. When mentioning this issue, Andrei lost his composure a little. He shook his head repeatedly to try to convince himself. However, anyone with an objective standpoint can see that in the middle of 1991, the huge Soviet Union was already shaky and no longer as glorious as it once was. As a soul crosser, Joel knew even more clearly that this Christmas, the Soviet Union would completely collapse, and its Cold War with the United States would also come to an end. Constantine clenched his wand, stepped forward and cast a stunning spell to knock Andre unconscious, then confiscated his wand. Can we send him and his 2 men back to the Soviet Union? Professor White translated this question to Joel, who thought for a moment. No problem. Andre's injuries are very serious, and it will take about 3 or 4 months for him to recover. By that time, the Soviet Union had been in complete chaos, and the Eternal Night people were too busy to take care of themselves, and there would be no extra manpower to capture Constantine. Professor White took over this matter, and she found another Eternal Night person on the branch of a big tree, and took them to the nearest doctor pack, and shipped them to the Soviet Union. After everything was over, Professor White sent Joel back to Hogsmeade. You should go back to school first, Professor White said apologetically. So many things have happened in the past 2 days. I'm sorry to drag you into this matter. You won't use the Oblivion charm on me this time, will you, Professor White? Joel looked up at the broad blue sky, in a good mood. Professor White laughed and rubbed his head vigorously. Just when Professor White sent the Eternal Night Man to the dock, the system had already prompted. Congratulations to the host for completing the side quest. Claire White is not in danger of life for the time being. The evaluation completion level of this quest is A, and the reward package has been issued to the inventory. Comfortable. Joel went to Honeyduke's candy store, picked up a lot of candy in it, and then returned to Hogwarts Castle through the secret passage. It was Sunday afternoon, and the castle was happy and peaceful. Many students sat by the Black Lake reading books and chatting to pass the time, and some people were breaking the breadcrumbs in their hands to feed the big octopus in the Black Lake. On the Quidditch field, the Hufflepuff team was training. They flew across the field in various flying formations, with beautiful and light postures. Joel returned to the dormitory with a bunch of candies in his arms. Eddie was lying on the bed humming. Joel threw a few candies to him, and learned that the other 2 roommates were studying hard in the library to prepare for the next final exam. Why aren't you reviewing? Joel asked in confusion. I don't want to work hard. Eddie rolled around on the bed twice. Joel shrugged his shoulders. There were not so many rich women in the magic world, and he still had to worry about his livelihood. He quickly packed his toiletries and ran to the bathroom to take a shower. In the past 2 days, his robe and body were covered with a lot of dirt and dust. After rinsing and throwing the changed robe and trousers into the laundry basket, Joel sat on the bed, rubbed his palms, and opened the system panel. He found the exaggerated reward package in the inventory, which was winking at him. Joel couldn't wait to open it, and several system prompts popped up. You opened the reward package and got 10 lucky wheel draw opportunities, 3-day photographic memory experience card, and object transfiguration, intermediate. The rewards were generous, but Joel was worried when he saw the 10 lucky wheel opportunities. It was a torture for a non-African like him to open the lucky wheel. If he went to pray to the goddess of luck, Haley, he might have some mandatory tasks. He closed his eyes and simply used up all 10 lucky wheel opportunities. Congratulations on winning the Black Area prize and getting a thank you for participating. Congratulations on winning the Black Area prize and getting a thank you for participating. What's going on? Something is wrong. Joel felt that his luck was extremely bad. All 10 spins of the wheel actually won black, the worst prize, a set of Head and Shoulders hair care set, and a Gillette razor, both worthless muggle things. Fortunately, it was practical, Joel sighed. But after all the rewards appeared in the inventory, the system suddenly popped up another prompt. Congratulations to the host for achieving 10 consecutive draws of black prizes in the Lucky Wheel project. You have obtained the title of Non-African Primary. The Non-African Primary treasure chest has been issued. I hope the host will continue to work hard and achieve more success. Is this the surprise reward that appeared in the system when Joel drew the black gift box at the beginning? Why does this title seem familiar to him? It seems to be in a Krypton Gold mobile game in the pig farm. He didn't believe that this Pipi Xie Krypton Gold system was made by the pig farm before, but when he saw this non-African title, he began to doubt it. He swept his eyes across the inventory and saw a treasure chest similar to the one in the movie Pirates of the Caribbean lying on it. It was rusty and worthless. Click on the treasure chest with your mind, and a system prompt appeared. To compensate for your bad luck in the lucky draw system, you will be given purple equipment compensation hammer of repentance. It was a silver hammer that looked simple and unpretentious, and looked no different from his previous indestructible hammer. They are all hammers. Can they drop gold coins? Joel saw its uniqueness in the weapon introduction column. There is a 15% chance of applying the repentance effect to the enemy when attacking it. Confession. His mind was severely damaged, his spellcasting power was weakened by 30%, and his movement speed was reduced by 20%. God wants him to change his job to a paladin. I'll try to post a chapter in the morning and ask for your recommendation votes. Chapter 59. Final exam. Joel exchanged the hammer of repentance and lay on the bed, holding the cold hammer handle in his hand and laughing. Not bad. Although his luck was a little bad, the system didn't treat him badly, right? A purple equipment hammer. Very nice. In the next week, Professor White did not appear in Hogwarts. According to the headmaster Mr. Dumbledore, she had some family affairs to deal with. Joel could guess that she was going to settle Constantine. However, the final exam was just around the corner, and the students had no time to think about the family affairs of the beautiful Professor White, except for some self-destructive students who did not plan to review their lessons. Most students still planned to cram before the exam. After all, if the test scores were too bad, this long summer vacation would not be a good day. Joel had no parents, so naturally no one worried about his grades, but as a student he still had to take every exam seriously. In order to improve the teaching quality of Hogwarts and help those students who did not want to study hard to improve their test scores, the Ministry of Magic Wizard Examination Administration began to promote the CLBT Magic course solution produced by them. With the hard work of the staff of the Wizard Examination Administration, 4 sets of CLBT Magic course solution were published. They are planning to open up sales with the upcoming final exams and sell well all over the world. But this has little to do with Joel and the other 4. They are just enjoying the dividends from the copyright of this set of books. A week before the final exam, Professor White appeared in the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom, holding a large stack of handouts in his arms. Joel clearly saw Professor White winking at him when he entered the door. This is the focus of our exam next week. I have marked it for you. Professor White distributed the handouts. If nothing unexpected happens, our final exam will be the same as the OWL, Ordinary Wizard Level Test, not Overwatch League, you will participate in your 5th grade. Both the written test and the practical operation account for 50% of the final score. After receiving the handouts, someone compared it with the CLBT magic course solution he had purchased before, and found that the key points were highly consistent, and the CLBT magic course solution also had matching exercises corresponding to the key points, and the analysis was also very detailed. Professor White did not intend to let the students deal with dark magic creatures in this class, mainly because she did not have time to prepare, so she simply asked them to stay in their seats and read books for review. After walking around the classroom for a while, she found that most of the students were holding a book she had never seen before. "What is this?" She came to Joel's desk and asked curiously. She was not polite, and took Joel's book away, and read it carefully. "It's a little thing published by me and a few roommates," Joel whispered. Professor White then remembered that Joel had told her before that he had contacted the British Ministry of Magic to meet at the Three Broomsticks. After flipping through a few pages, Professor White's tone was a little more admiring. "You are very attentive. I didn't think of many knowledge points." She did not lower her voice when she said this, and the students in the whole classroom heard it, which made many students who did not originally buy teaching materials also moved. In the classroom before the final exam, many professors praised the CLBT magic course solution, saying that their understanding of the textbooks was excellent and the real questions in it were also very meaningful for consolidating and reviewing. This further promoted the sales of the magic course solution. Hogwarts students had one copy each, and some lower grade students even bought all the teaching aids for other grades in advance. The manager of Flourish and Blot's bookstore was very happy. All the books in the British magic world were resold from him, and the income from each order was very substantial. Joel and his friends were not so idle. They sat in the study area of Ravenclaw, plugging their ears and memorizing quickly, mumbling non-stop. Joel and his three friends didn't breathe a sigh of relief until most of the students in the common room left. Joel rubbed his temples. His brain was running at high speed all day, so he was inevitably a little tired. Sitting in the quiet study area, sleepiness came like a tide. "What sin have we committed?" Eddie walked over with a shake of his head, looking sad. "After publishing a supplementary textbook, the students' grades have all gone up. We have to work harder to improve our ranking. It is worth mentioning that the grades of Hogwarts exams are the same as OWL, outstanding, O, exceeds expectations, E, acceptable, A, poor, P, dreadful, D, and troll, T. From good to bad, the top 15% of students get O grades, followed by E, A, P, and D, each accounting for 20%, and finally T grades accounting for 5%. You are not among those who study hard. Sergi opened the water cup and took a sip. "I saw you were quite happy when you were playing cards." "Ah." Eddie sighed. "I have accepted my fate. Even if I study hard, I can't compare with you three. I don't want to, but my eyes refuse to send information to my brain as soon as I see the content in the textbook." He shrugged. "I'm not good at studying. Instead, I'm more interested in making money." Joel didn't respond. He closed the textbook and put it in his school bag. He just felt that Eddie was not responsible for his studies, but it was not his turn to say anything. As long as Eddie was happy, it was fine. The final exams came with the warm summer breeze. The desks in each classroom were pulled apart. Everyone leaned on the table and wrote furiously. The professors walked back and forth with their hands behind their backs. The ingredients of the sleeping potion. Joel glanced at the test paper and wrote on it with a feather pen without stopping. Valerian branches, flobberworm mucus, lavender and a standard ingredient. These theoretical knowledge did not stump him. Joel had his own way of memorizing. Professor Snape leaned over to look at the students' test papers one by one. He pursed his lips tightly, and his face was full of dark clouds. It seemed that he was about to lose control of his emotions. He just couldn't understand why so many people got it wrong on such an easy potion ingredient list. Isn't this the simplest and most basic knowledge? He felt that his nostrils were spitting out hot air like a camel, and he was about to be unable to suppress his anger. After reading the nonsense on Eddie Carmichael's test paper, mix the sluice grass and the soundless bird feathers together and stir evenly, then add 5g of moonstone powder to get a blood tonic. Snape's chest rose and fell violently. He was about to explode. Before the exam, He reviewed the steps of making blood replenishing potion with his students, which was obviously a hint that the final exam would rely on this knowledge. But why are there still students making up stories? Was he too lenient with these students? He should be stricter in the future, otherwise these naughty students will not take him seriously at all. He thought bitterly, and looked up to see Joel sitting behind Eddie. Professor Snape hesitated for a while, but he didn't turn his head after all. Joel Taylor, he was deeply impressed by this kid. In the first half of the school year, his practical class grades were a mess, but after February, he seemed to have suddenly found the trick to potions, and his practical class grades improved by leaps and bounds. Although he was not among the best, he could see that he was making progress. To be fair, he prefers such students who are willing to work hard, even though they have no talent. Please recommend. Chapter 60, Post-Exam Carnival. Walking to Joel's desk, Snape leaned over to look at his test paper. The handwriting was very neat, and the answers were detailed and easy to understand. Snape took a quick glance, and found that the answers on the test paper were impeccable. If there were no problems with the practical operation of potions, Snape was sure that Joel Taylor would get a beautiful O in potions this year. After seeing Joel's perfect test paper, Snape's previous angry and manic heart was suppressed, just like eating a large bowl of ice cream on a sultry summer day. He silently praised in his heart, and his face remained calm, and he continued to move forward. After looking at the test papers of Sergei and Alan, Snape's mood finally brightened up, just like the scorching summer outside. It seems that it is not his problem as a teacher. Look, aren't there so many students who filled out the test papers perfectly? Sure enough, it was those poor students who were not interested in potions, and it had nothing to do with his own teaching methods. Snape comforted himself in this way. In fact, in the eyes of most students, including Joel, Snape is really not a good teacher. He favored Slytherin students. He only gave Slytherin students extra points, not deducted them. He sneered at students in class, and from time to time he would describe them as trolls and other insulting words. He did not clearly describe the steps of brewing potions. In Snape's opinion, these steps were too simple and there was no need to describe them at all. But not all students were potion geniuses, and they needed the careful guidance of professors to go further on this road. And Snape's approach was undoubtedly to undermine the students' interest and enthusiasm in learning. Their dissatisfaction with Snape was easily transferred to potions, and passive sabotage was very common. This situation not only happened in the magic world, but also often happened in Joel's previous life. How many people in their school days disliked that subject because of dissatisfaction with their teachers? After climbing the astronomical tower at night and drawing a star map through the telescope, their week-long final exams finally came to an end. Because the 5th and 7th grade students had finished their grade exams this afternoon, when Joel and his classmates returned to the Ravenclaw common room, it had already become a sea of joy. Before they even had time to put down their school bags, they were pulled into the crowd. On the sofa and coffee table in the center of the common room, there were all kinds of snacks and cards, and many people gathered together to play. The surroundings were noisy, a scene never seen before in the Ravenclaw common room. Sergei frowned tightly and pursed his lips tightly. Joel always felt that he would overturn the table in the next second. Don't be so nervous, try this. Eddie touched 4 bottles of butterbeer and came back, the signature drink of the 3 broomsticks in Hogsmeade Village. Joel took it, unscrewed the bottle cap, and took a sip. Alan was stunned for a moment. Isn't this beer? We are too young. Oh, it's not real beer, it's just a drink, Eddie explained, with a bit of impatience between his eyebrows. After opening the bottle cap, Alan smelled it twice, and found that there was no smell of alcohol, before drinking it with confidence. Who paid for all this? Sergei took the butterbeer from Eddie's hand, and didn't open it, but asked such a question first. Eddie shrugged his shoulders. Why are you asking this? It's not my money anyway. Joel glanced at Sergei, as if he had noticed something. Hearing this, Sergei immediately put the drink bottle back, and refused to drink it, no matter how Eddie persuaded him. Alan, who was as careful as a hare, also understood what Sergei was thinking. Looking at the butterbeer that he had taken a big gulp of, his face flushed a little. I asked senior sister Caitlin to buy the candies and drinks in Hogsmeade Village. Haley heard their conversation and chuckled. Don't worry, I won't put diarrhea potion in the food, like Professor Snape did. Maybe it was because the final exams were over. Joel found that this girl was particularly lively tonight. When he tutored her in spells a few weekends ago, she looked shy. Eddie laughed in cooperation. Professor Snape always threatened them in class. If I find that the diarrhea potion you made is not up to standard, I will put enough diarrhea potion in your plate to let you know how it works. Sergi found the real owner. He fumbled in his pocket and took out a few silver sickles. How much is this bottle of butterbeer? I'll pay you. No, just have fun. Haley smiled shyly. She wanted to relax after the exam today. Thanks to the set of teaching materials Joel gave her for Christmas, she felt that her grades in this final exam would be very good. This way, she could give an explanation to her parents when she went home. Thinking that she could make her parents happier when she got home, Haley was particularly happy tonight. No, Sergi said seriously, I can't let you spend so much money. He handed over the silver sickles in his hand. Haley was stunned for a second. She looked at Joel helplessly, obviously not knowing how to deal with the situation. Joel pointed at himself, and then at Haley. His movements were very obscure. Haley's mind raced. It's like this. Joel helped me with my homework before, and I haven't given him a proper thank you gift yet. How about these snacks and drinks being treated as Joel's treat? As she spoke, she made a gesture to Joel, wanting him to help her. Haley's meaning was very clear to Joel. She and Sergi lived in the same dormitory, so it was normal to share drinks with her roommate, right? Sure enough, Sergi was silent after hearing this. Joel remembered that, when they first went to Nocturne Alley to sell books, they bought candies at Honeyduke's candy store on the way back, and Sergi had shared some with his roommate. Haley saw that Sergi had given up the idea of giving her money, and she felt a little relieved, but was called away by Qiyu Zhang who came over. The four of them fell into an awkward situation, where they had nothing to say, and no one took the initiative to say anything. Joel felt that Sergi's words just now were quite inappropriate, but he had almost gotten used to Sergi's low emotional intelligence over the past year, and fortunately he didn't offend anyone. He took a sip of the butterbeer. The butterbeer made by the Three Broomsticks was a must try. A little salt was added to the caramel cream sauce on the surface of the drink to neutralize the sweet feeling. The lemon juice was refreshing. The cream soda as the main component of the drink made the butterbeer taste like real beer when it entered the mouth. Not long after, Marita came over and took Alan away. Alan's expression was obviously relieved when he left. Eddie felt bored after staying with the two for a while and ran to watch several senior students playing landlord. Sergi watched his roommates leave one by one and couldn't help but clench the few silver sickles in his hand. The round edge of the silver coin was turned into a needle piercing his heart when he exerted force. Joel shook the bottle, tilted his neck, and poured the remaining butterbeer into his mouth. Asking for some recommendation votes and investment, the number of investors will soon exceed 100. Chapter 61, Farewell. After the exams, they will have to stay in Hogwarts Castle for another week, during which there will be the last Quidditch match, Slytherin vs. Ravenclaw. After this match, the final winner of this year's Quidditch Cup and House Cup will be decided, based on the previous matches, as long as Ravenclaw does not lose by 320 points or more, Gryffindor will win the Quidditch trophy. The difference of 320 points seems exaggerated, but for the weak Ravenclaw Quidditch team, everything is possible. They just set an astonishing difference of 290 points in February. With such a precedent, Slytherin House seems to be much more relaxed. It's just 320 points. We just need to score 3 more goals than the Gryffindors in that game, their Quidditch captain said with disdain. There is no doubt that such remarks stimulated the sensitive and proud self-esteem of Ravenclaw people. They didn't believe it. Before, they had to take care of their studies and had no time to practice. Now that the exams are over, can they lose so many points by practicing intensively? It really can. Joel and his roommates went to the Quidditch field to watch the game because they were relaxed after the exam. The Ravenclaw Quidditch team was beaten on the ground. The Slytherin team's seeker was much stronger than Joel's. Due to the score difference, the Slytherin team was not in a hurry to end the game. In the end, this 3-hour game broke the score difference record again. At 20:350, Slytherin won this year's Quidditch trophy with a slight advantage. The victory of this game allowed Slytherin to add another 100 points in the competition for the College Cup. Now they are far ahead. Now only the final exam results have not been announced. Every O in the final exam can help your college get a 5-point reward, and a T will also deduct 5 points from the college. On Wednesday afternoon, in the last defense against the Dark Arts class of this semester, Professor White announced the results of the final exam and explained the test paper. Joel, Sergi and Haley got O, excellent, while Alan and Eddie got E, exceeded expectations. During the class, Eddie kept stealing glances at Professor White's cheeks. Joel discovered that, since the matter of the Eternal Night People was dealt with, Professor White's face had become healthier and rosier, and her smile had never diminished, making her look even more bright and charming. She also wore a pair of high heels today, which made her look particularly tall and straight. Professor White paced in the classroom with one hand behind her back and reviewed the test papers. Soon, she had finished reviewing the entire test paper and stopped in front of the podium. "Students," she smiled, "this is your last defense against the Dark Arts class in the first grade, and it is also my last class as a teacher for you." The rustling sound in the audience disappeared, and everyone looked up at Professor White. The 11 or 12-year-old children had great doubts in their eyes. "I will leave the UK next week, and Professor Dumbledore has already agreed to my resignation," Professor White said with a trace of sadness in her smiling eyes. "We may have to say goodbye now." The students chattered and discussed, and the smile on Professor White's lips slowly faded. These were the first batch of students in her teaching career, and she was really reluctant to say goodbye. But all good things must come to an end. When the bell rang, she took a deep look at the little students under the podium. She packed her bag and cleaned up the blackboard, feeling a little melancholy. Before leaving, she knocked on Joel's desk and asked him to come out with her. In the corridor on the 4th floor of the castle, Joel looked at Professor White's beautiful face, and she smiled. "Constantine and I plan to settle in France. My mother lived there in her youth, and I have decided to bring my talent to Paris. No, to find a job on the other side of the ocean. The Boxburton School of Magic has sent me a letter of employment," she said in a cheerful tone. "I enjoy the sense of accomplishment that comes from teaching and educating people. Congratulations, Professor White." Joel congratulated her sincerely. Professor White looked at the cheerful students coming and going in the corridor, hesitated for a moment, and reached out and patted Joel on the head in his puzzled expression. "You must work hard and don't slack off. The future of the magic world belongs to you, Joel. After all, you are the smartest student I have ever met," she said with sincere emotion. "Don't say that. If Professor McGonagall said that, it would be credible. How many students have you taught?" Professor White smiled. The afternoon sun shone through the glass window on her beautiful face, shining with a bit of golden light. She rubbed Joel's head again. "I hope that, when we meet next time, you will have become a wizard who can stand on your own." After saying that, she turned around and left with her bag. Joel watched her go downstairs. Her high heels knocking on the ground made a crisp sound, and her figure gradually went away. He returned to the classroom, and most of the students inside had already left. Several roommates were still sitting inside waiting for him. "What did Miss White say to you?" Eddie came over curiously. "Nothing, just told me to work hard." "Oh." Eddie lay down, looking listless. "Why didn't she look for me? I worked hard in defense against the dark arts." This was the truth. Defense against the dark arts, herbology, and history of magic were read as 3 best subjects, and only these 3 subjects did he review systematically before the final exam. Professor Flitwick came to the common room that night. He walked to the bulletin board with 5 report cards in his hand. Due to his limited height, Professor Flitwick could only use the pasting charm to paste the report cards on the bulletin board. When the Ravenclaw students saw the report cards, they were like sharks smelling blood, and they all came over. Except for the 5th and 7th grades. Their OWL and Newt exams will be mailed by the Ministry of Magic after the holiday. The scores of all Ravenclaw students in the other 5 grades were on it. The little first-year students wanted to get closer to see, but the senior students were strong and crowded in front of the bulletin board. Joel could only see the backs of their heads when he tilted his neck. After the senior students dispersed, the little ones finally saw Professor Flitwick and the notice board above his head. Joel quickly searched for his name and finally felt relieved when he saw a long string of Os after his name. Sergei, who was ranked above him, also had all Os, which was within Joel's expectations. In terms of magical talent alone, Sergei was much stronger than him. Following him were Haley, Qiu and Alan, and their grades were also pretty good. Eddie was ranked last. He got Os in herbology and history of magic, but only a T in potions. His grades in other subjects were not high either. I'm asking for recommendation votes. I'm just a few votes away. If you haven't voted yet, please vote. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62, The College Cup Belongs. You two did well in the exam this time. You two alone helped Ravenclaw earn nearly 100 points, Professor Flitwick said happily to Joel and Sergei. Keep up the good work, and keep up the momentum. He remembered that these two students also stood out in the sticking charm test at the beginning of the semester, and won 2 sets of Chadwick's magic from him. Thank you, Professor. Joel bowed slightly. Have you finished reading the set of books I gave you last time? Professor Flitwick led the two to the corner. After the final exam, he had a lot of free time, so he didn't mind exchanging ideas about spells with the two students. Joel and Sergei were glad that, after selling the signed version of the book, they went to Flourish and Blots to buy the original version. This year, they had basically finished reading the first book, so the 3 short people of similar height gathered together to share their understanding of the book. During this time, the 3 of them compared this set of books with the standard spells, written by British Ms. Miranda Goshawk in many aspects. It was not until curfew that Professor Flitwick let them go reluctantly. The 2 thirsty people said goodbye to Professor Flitwick and ran back to the dormitory to take a big gulp of water. Time turned and it was Friday evening. At today's dinner, Professor Dumbledore will summarize this school year and award the College Cup. The roommates woke up very early. After going to the bathroom to tidy up, Joel changed into a standard robe and leaned on the bed to finish reading the second volume, Chadwick's Magic. Seeing that it was still early, Joel simply packed his luggage. The Hogwarts train on Saturday morning would take him back to London. His previous application for staying in school during the summer vacation was rejected because he still had the director of the orphanage as his guardian in the Muggle world. When sorting out the parchment and books in the drawer, he saw a purple pocket box with a layer of floating dust on it. Gently brushing off the dust, Joel opened the box and saw the exquisite sapphire brooch inside. For some reason, he pinned the brooch on the right chest of his robe, echoing the Ravenclaw badge on the left chest. Where did you get the brooch? Eddie asked curiously. Well, I bought it. Joel didn't say it was a Christmas gift, otherwise Eddie would definitely ask more questions with his gossipy level. Very beautiful, Alan praised sincerely. In the evening, the 4 of them went to the auditorium. Today, all the students of the 7 grades of Hogwarts gathered together and filled their respective college tables. On the walls around the auditorium, there were several huge banners with Slytherin snakes painted on them. The silver snakes were lifelike and stared at everyone with cold and emotionless eyes. After all the students were seated, Professor Dumbledore stood up, stretched out his hands like at the opening ceremony, with a kind and gentle smile on his face, and the noisy voices on the long table immediately subsided. Another school year. He raised his voice before enjoying the delicious food. Please listen to the clichés of an old man like me. This year has been fulfilling and wonderful. I believe that after a year of study, your little heads have been enriched with knowledge, both in theoretical knowledge and life experience. Dumbledore blinked. We are about to usher in a 2-month summer vacation. Before emphasizing a series of precautions, we will first award this year's House Cup. Dumbledore gently waved his wand, and a scoreboard appeared in front of him. Each gem on the scoreboard symbolized a score. Ruby represented Gryffindor, Sapphire represented Ravenclaw, Emerald corresponded to Slytherin, and Diamond belonged to Hufflepuff College. The first place is Slytherin, 490 points. The second is Gryffindor, 420 points. The third is Ravenclaw, 340 points. And the last is Hufflepuff, 320 points. The students at the Slytherin table cheered thunderously. This will be the 6th consecutive year that they have won the House Cup. Many students also made provocative gestures towards their old rivals, the Gryffindor students. Professor Snape at the teacher's seat slightly twitched the corners of his lips, obviously in a good mood. Professor McGonagall stared at the children at her own school's long table with a cold expression. Good performance. Dumbledore chuckled. But when I woke up this morning, I received a package. I think it is necessary to make some changes to the scores on the last day of the semester. Hearing this, the Slytherin students quieted down, and everyone focused their eyes on Professor Dumbledore, watching him wave his wand. The package on the teacher's seat opened, and a piece of parchment flew in front of him. Professor Dumbledore cleared his throat, his blue eyes bright and clear. Since the end of last year, CLBT Magic Course Complete Solution has become popular in the global wizarding world. As of the date of this letter, June 15th, the global sales of the series have exceeded 30,000 copies, becoming the world's best-selling book in the past 5 years. In view of the contributions of the original authors of the book, your school students Eddie Carmichael, Sergi Rowe, Alan Bott and Joel Taylor to the series, the Order of Merlin has decided to award them the Order of Merlin, 3rd class. After reading it, Dumbledore showed everyone the full picture of the letter. The letter was signed with the seal of the Order of Merlin, confirming that it was correct and fair. 4 children, please come to me. Dumbledore waved his wand again, and 4 velvet boxes rose from the package, opening them to reveal the Order of Merlin, 3rd class. Joel and the other 3 looked at each other and came to the teacher's seat. Now all the students and professors focused their attention on them. This was in stark contrast to the scene when no one paid attention to Joel during the sorting ceremony. Now everyone in the auditorium was watching them, and they were enjoying the treatment of the protagonist. Everyone never expected that the teaching materials that helped them improve their final exam scores were actually made by 4 junior students. This is the 3rd level medal of the Order of Merlin. Although the 3rd level medal is the easiest medal to obtain in the Order of Merlin, it also requires a very high contribution to the magic world to have a chance to obtain it. Professor Dumbledore, Professor Snape and Professor McGonagall who were present were all members of the Order of Merlin. Under the hot eyes of everyone present, Alan was obviously a little nervous. His little face was pale, and his calves were shaking because of nervousness. Eddie enjoyed being in the limelight in front of everyone. He held his chest up with a proud smile on his face, and Sergi continued to look like ice. Dumbledore leaned down and personally hung 4 3rd level medals of Merlin on their left chests. Very beautiful brooch, Joel. Dumbledore whispered to Joel as he put on the medal. Thank you for your compliment, Professor. Joel looked straight into his clear eyes without a trace of impurities and smiled, then looked down at the medal, which was made of pure gold and decorated with a white ribbon, looking luxurious and elegant. Excellent. You are the youngest recipients of the Order of Merlin in nearly 40 years. Dumbledore encouraged them. Hogwarts is proud of you. The 4 bowed slightly to the teachers' seats and then returned to their seats. Joel noticed that Haley glanced quickly at her sapphire brooch, and the corners of her mouth rose slightly, showing Joel a bright smile. In recognition of their contributions, the 4 students will each win 50 points for their house. Dumbledore led the applause. The whole audience applauded. The Ravenclaw students' cheeks flushed with excitement. They shook Joel and the other 3 desperately, with excited smiles on their faces. The Slytherin students sighed and were at a loss. 200 points. Then the winner of this year's House Cup is obvious. Dumbledore watched the Ravenclaw sapphire on the scoreboard in front of him grow rapidly, surpassing Gryffindor, catching up with Slytherin, and finally stopping at 540 points. It is now the 1st place. Ravenclaw. Dumbledore's wand drew a beautiful arc, and the hanging banners on the walls around the hall changed. The cold silver snake disappeared, and an eagle soaring in the sky appeared across the sky. After a loud cry, they merged into the banner, and the main color of the hall changed from silver green to blue and bronze. Professor Snape forced a smile to greet Professor Flitwick, who jumped 3 feet high. The prefects at the long table of Ravenclaw came forward and shook hands with Joel and his group one by one. Thanks to you. Thank you. Thank you. Prefect Catelyn was very excited. She gave each of the 4 little ones a hug, then came to Professor Dumbledore, took the house cup from him, and then turned around to hold the trophy high, her eyes slightly moist. Ravenclaw won the house cup for the 1990 to 1991 school year. They will keep the trophy for 1 year and then send it to the trophy display room. Please vote for recommendation. Chapter 63, The End of the First Grade. After Dumbledore announced that Ravenclaw won the house cup, the Gryffindor students shouted louder than the little eagles. The Gryffindors were happiest when their archenemy Slytherin was unhappy. After the dinner, they returned to the common room, and the revelry continued. Every student reached out to touch the house cup, which symbolized their efforts for the whole school year. The 4 biggest contributors were warmly welcomed by the students. I didn't expect that this set of teaching materials was compiled by the 4 of you. Catelyn, the prefect, said to Joel excitedly. This set of books helped me a lot with the OWL exam. Only the first year set was completed by us independently, Joel explained to her. The rest were produced by the Wizard Examinations Administration of the British Ministry of Magic. That's also thanks to you. If it weren't for you providing ideas, the staff of the Ministry of Magic would definitely not have thought of this good idea. Many students also came over to express their gratitude to them. The fiery enthusiasm made Sergei and Alan very uncomfortable, and they used the excuse of peeing to escape back to the dormitory. Eddie enjoyed the feeling of being the center of attention. He greeted the others in a familiar way, matching their names with their faces. Joel didn't want to join in the fun. Seeing that Eddie was enjoying it, he didn't intend to steal his limelight. He stayed quietly in the corner of the common room, tasting the chocolate cream biscuits that Caitlin stuffed into his mouth. The 2 ingredients drew a lifelike panda head on the biscuits. This round and cute animal is also enthusiastically sought after in foreign countries. Hi, Haley suddenly appeared beside him with a smile on her face, her eyes wandering in front of Joel's chest. He knew that Haley's focus was not on the Order of Merlin, but on the sapphire brooch she gave him. Congratulations. Thank you. The brooch you gave me is also very beautiful, Joel replied with a smile. It suits your face very well. Haley blushed for a moment. Tonight, she pushed the black hair that originally covered her face behind her ears, revealing her fair and delicate cheeks. Joel smiled and didn't continue. He could sense what Haley was thinking, but it was too early. He hadn't even celebrated his 12th birthday yet. It was not until late at night that they returned to the dormitory under the urging of Professor Flitwick. Lying on the bed and looking at the starry ceiling, Joel felt very happy. As a numerical planner in his previous life, he had never thought that he could make money without being scolded. Can he really make money standing up? Joel fell asleep happily with a beautiful dream. In his dream, he became a billionaire. The gold galleons he owned were enough to influence the operation of the entire magic world. All the Krypton gold values in the system were maximumed out, and the lucky wheel in the system mall was maximumed out by his gold galleons. After all, even if he was a non-African, he couldn't stand having so much money. The system inventory was full of various orange items, which were particularly conspicuous. The golden light was so dazzling that it woke him up from his dream. I don't know who didn't draw the curtains last night, and the summer sun pierced his eyes directly. After looking at the time, Joel thought that he would not have enough time to take a nap, so he stretched his numb body and stuffed the parchment and ink bottle on the table into the suitcase. Then he opened the birdcage, let the owl Poppy go out to find food, and told it to return to the dormitory before 8 AM. The roommates woke up one after another. After the 4 of them went to the auditorium for breakfast, they stayed in the dormitory to pack their luggage. Joel put all the first year textbooks in the dormitory, only packed the robes and several muggle clothes, and then put the Order of Merlin, 3rd class, into a black velvet box. Poppy the owl hurriedly flew into the window with a dead mouse in its mouth. Poppy, Joel said in a reproachful manner, how many times have I told you not to bring such things into the house? Poppy dropped the mouse in his mouth, tilted his head and grunted, as if he didn't understand. Joel had been with it for more than half a year, and knew that it was very cunning. He used the levitation spell to throw the dead mouse from the ground to the edge of the table outside the window. If you want to eat, eat outside. Don't even think about coming in. Joel didn't know where this owl developed this bad habit. The owl food he bought wasn't bad, but it preferred to eat dead mice outside. Dead mice are fine, as long as they're not pangolins or bats. Poppy cooed, calling Serge's snowy owl Caesar to share the food outside the window. At 8 o'clock, the sound of suitcases rolling over the ground came from the corridor outside the door, and from time to time there were the cries of pet owls. Joel quickly reached out of the window, pinched the backs of the two pets' necks, and stuffed them into the cage. The two owls made dissatisfied sounds, as they were reluctant to part with the dead mice they had just eaten half of. After going down the tower, they came to the lawn outside the lobby. There were 4 long lines here. The deans of each house were verifying the number of people. Filch was patrolling around with Mrs. Norris in his arms to prevent students from carrying prohibited items. After passing the Black Lake, there was a steep slope outside the school gate. The Hogwarts platform was just ahead, and the train was waiting for them with white smoke. The 4 squeezed past several senior students and just sat in the compartment at the end of the train. The train roared and started slowly. Joel looked back at the Hogwarts that was getting farther and farther away and was sure that his first year in this magic school was over. The 4 chatted non-stop along the way. Except for Sergi, everyone had endless things to say. Everyone knew that they would have to wait until the new school year that would start in 2 months before they could meet again, and everyone wanted time to go slower. But the train sped forward, and when it got dark, the train had already entered the city of London. The speed of the train slowed down, and Joel and Eddie changed into muggle clothes. After not wearing it for more than half a year, this short-sleeved shirt was a little small from the shoulder line. Joel planned to wear it for 2 days, and then buy some clothes that fit him, after he had dealt with the problem of living in the muggle area. The train whistle sounded again, and the 4 people said goodbye in a hurry and left. Joel and Eddie got off the train together, and left platform 9 under the cover of 2 wizard guards. They merged into the crowd of muggles who were unaware of the situation. Not long after walking, Eddie recognized his parents who came to pick him up. He carried his suitcase and dived into the arms of his father, who looked honest and simple. "Let me see if you have gained weight. The food at Hogwarts is much better than your mother's." Eddie's mother was dressed neatly in a business suit. She looked at Joel, who was standing aside with an owl cage. "You are Joel, right? Eddie often talked about you in his letters." "Hello, Mrs. Carmichael." Joel pretended to be well behaved. His handsome face and quiet and gentle voice left a very deep first impression on Mrs. Carmichael. "Please vote for recommendation. I will update well from tomorrow," I said. "Definitely. Definitely." Chapter 64, Orphanage. "Would you like to have a simple meal outside?" Mrs. Carmichael took the initiative to invite. Joel was not going to go back to the orphanage tonight. Anyway, no one was taking care of him now, so he simply accepted the Carmichael couple's favor. He thanked the couple and then followed Eddie into a silver Ford sedan. Mrs. Carmichael drove the car, while Mr. Carmichael was responsible for communicating with Eddie and Joel. "I heard about the set of teaching materials you made. It's really a great feat, especially for your age." Mr. Carmichael sighed. "When we were in school, we didn't have these tutorial books. We had to figure everything out by ourselves." "It was Joel's idea," Eddie said excitedly. "He has a lot of ideas for making money in his mind. You little brat thinks about money all day long." Mr. Carmichael rubbed Eddie's head with an intimate gesture. After having a simple meal outside, Joel refused the Carmichael couple's invitation to stay overnight. He carried his luggage and owl cage to Charing Cross Road and found the leaky cauldron. It was dark and damp here. Many wizards gathered at a table to drink and chat. The man at the bar was wiping his wine glass. His movements were very casual. "Hello, is there any vacant room here?" Joel asked politely. The man, Tom, the owner of the leaky cauldron, put down his wine glass and took out a key from under the bar. 2 galleons a night, 10 sickles deposit. Return the deposit after checking the items in the room. Breakfast is free. Joel took money out of his pocket and put it on the bar. After learning the room number, he took the key and walked upstairs. With the creaking of the wooden stairs, he came to the 2nd floor of the bar. "Room 11. Joel confirmed the room number, opened the door with the key in his hand and walked in. There was a smell of dust in his face, as if no one had cleaned it for a long time. The room was not big. Joel estimated that it was about 15 square meters. There was only a bed, a fireplace, a window and a mirror in the room. It looked very simple, but it was within Joel's acceptable range. He put the suitcase next to the bed, then opened the owl cage and let Poppy, who had been cooped up for a day, go out for some fresh air. He opened his purse and counted his remaining assets. With the dividends sent by the Ministry of Magic last month, he still had a little more than 110 galleons on hand, which was about £500. The purchasing power of £500 in 1991 was roughly equivalent to more than £1,000 in later generations. This was undoubtedly a huge sum of money for an 11-year-old child. With the dividends every month, he could definitely stay in the leaky cauldron for a vacation. Joel planned to follow his memory to visit the orphanage, where he had stayed before tomorrow. He also had a bunch of birth information and identity information there. Joel lay on the bed with his clothes on. The soft pillow stimulated the fatigue of a whole day of travel, and he fell into a deep sleep. He was woken up by Poppy the next morning. It stepped on Joel's quilt, holding a dead mouse in its mouth, and staring at Joel with wide eyes. Merlin. Joel covered his eyes and sighed. "I warned you many times not to bring dead mice into my room," he shouted loudly. Bobby could guess from Joel's expression and volume that he was scolding himself. He flapped his wings twice in grievance and flew to the windowsill. "If you don't want to eat it, then don't eat it. Why are you shouting so loudly?" He covered his body with his wings and began to enjoy the dead mouse. He really couldn't understand why such a delicious food as mice was not popular with humans. Bobby's little head was filled with big doubts. Joel turned over and got out of bed. The bathroom and toilet in the leaky cauldron were shared. After washing and changing clothes, he went downstairs. Some residents were already sitting on chairs enjoying breakfast. They didn't talk to each other, but just looked at the magazines and newspapers in their hands. Seeing him coming downstairs, Tom handed him a breakfast from the bar. Several residents' eyes stayed on Joel's jeans, which was no different from strange clothes for wizards. The breakfast was toast, scrambled eggs, some mushrooms and a glass of milk. The taste was much worse than that made by the house elves in Hogwarts. Joel had lived in this country with poor food for nearly a year and had gradually become familiar with the monotonous food here. He moved quickly, eating the burnt bread first, and then drank half of the milk in the cup. The milk rushed the rough cake into his stomach along his throat. He felt that his esophagus was stretched and painful, and he hurriedly swallowed the scrambled eggs on the plate. After breakfast, Joel said goodbye to Tom, left the leaky cauldron, and embarked on a journey to find the orphanage. It is worth mentioning that, since Joel's soul was transferred to this body, the remaining memories in his mind have gradually become blurred. These memories that do not belong to Joel himself are being erased bit by bit. When the last memory disappears, the original owner of the body really disappears from this world. Only he, the person who borrowed the body, is left. This topic is too heavy. Joel shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He jumped off the bus. The surrounding high-rise buildings are all the same, and the orphanage is hidden somewhere. He only remembered the general location of the orphanage and the name of the director, but he had completely forgotten the name of the orphanage and the landmarks around it. Fortunately, he had a mouth under his nose, so asking for directions was not a problem for him. After twisting left and right, he finally arrived at the orphanage where the original owner of his body lived a few years ago at noon. Looking up at the doorplot of the orphanage, Joel didn't know whether to say 1,000 swear words in his mind. Whose orphanage? This orphanage is famous. Voldemort Tom Riddle grew up here. The shadow of his childhood and the deformed combination of his parents have forged his twisted and cruel character. There was no guard at the door of the orphanage, and Joel easily stepped through the door and entered the main building. He walked in the dark corridor. Two thin children of similar age passed by here. They looked at Joel with timid and fearful eyes. One of them opened his mouth to speak, but his companion next to him elbowed him hard. The three of them passed by each other, and then Joel heard the two of them whispering. Their voices were so low that he couldn't hear clearly. He frowned slightly. It seemed that the original owner of the body had not had a peaceful life in the orphanage during those years. After passing a few rooms, Joel could see with his peripheral vision that, although the rooms inside were small and shabby, they were clean and tidy, and seemed to be well managed. The director's office was at the end of the corridor. Joel reached out and knocked on the door, and heard an old voice from inside. "Come in." Joel pushed open the door, and a white-haired old woman sitting behind the desk raised her head. She had a kind face and was energetic, and was processing a document on the table. "Long time no see, Joel." She stood up and poured Joel a glass of water. "How are you doing in that boarding school? Please vote for recommendation." Chapter 65. Mystery of Life. Joel hesitated for a moment, glanced at the old lady's face in front of him, and confirmed that she didn't know the true identity of Hogwarts. "Not bad. The classmates are very enthusiastic." "That's good." The old lady nodded with relief. "I'm just worried that you won't get along with others when you go out of here." Joel felt that the Woos orphanage didn't seem as scary as he imagined. At least from the attitude of the dean and the layout of the room Joel had seen before, this orphanage was quite normal. "Dean Feynman, do you know how I got here back then?" Joel asked his question, while observing the dean's face. Dean Feynman sighed. "Let me think about it carefully. That thing happened a long time ago. 10 years ago in the autumn, a weak young woman sent you to the Woos orphanage. When you were still young, Dean Feynman took a sip of water and sorted out the memories in his mind. I saw that she was very weak, so I helped her into the house and poured her a glass of water. After that, Dean Feynman frowned tightly. Strange, I can't remember it." She immediately started to rummage through the file bag stacked on the table. "Let me look for it. Every child who enters the orphanage has a file that records the reasons why they became orphans. It's not here anymore. Could it be that I put it in the cabinet?" Dean Feynman said to himself. Joel took a sip of water and suppressed his restless heart. "How could it be that I can't find it?" Dean Feynman moved all the files in the cabinet out. Seeing that she was struggling, Joel hurried forward to help. "Please also help me find the files of the children who were admitted to the hospital 10 years ago." Dean Feynman glanced at the file bag in his hand, put it down, and picked up another one. "It should be from 1981. 1981. 1981. Joel carefully flipped through each file in his hand. The child's name and the year of admission were clearly written on the file, but no matter how hard the two searched, they couldn't find Joel's file. "Hiss." Dean Feynman shook his head. "Did I lose it by accident? It shouldn't be." She stood up tremblingly. "I'll call the Social Security Advisory Committee. They should have your information there." Dean Feynman took out a pen and wrote it down in a notebook while dialing the phone. Soon after, she hung up the phone and handed the notebook to Joel. "They said your parents died in a car accident. You survived by chance, so the government sent you to Woos orphanage. Maybe I got it wrong before. I'm really sorry." Dean Feynman smiled embarrassedly. "I'm really old and confused, but I won't be busy for much longer. This orphanage will soon be closed down." "What do you mean?" Joel frowned. "A real estate company has taken a fancy to this land. They offered a high price and said they wanted to build an office building." With the help of Joel, Dean Feynman put the file bags back to their original place. "Now that society is developing better and better, there are fewer children who need to be taken in by orphanages. The government is planning to take this opportunity to close down Woos orphanage." After sorting it out, Dean Feynman sat in a chair and panted. She was too old. If the orphanage had not found a suitable manager, she would have retired long ago. "Many of your children have already gone to boarding school, and I don't have much work to do right now. I just need to finish the work at the orphanage in 2 years, and then I can go home to spend my old age," Dean Feynman said with a smile. "I miss the wheat fields in my hometown in Wiltshire. During the harvest season, I can smell the aroma of malt when I stay in the house. London is too prosperous, so prosperous that it makes people breathless." She shook her head. "I've had enough of it here. By the way, I've cleaned up your room. Do you want to come and see it?" Joel seemed to be moved by Dean Feynman's words. He followed the old man to the room next to the dean's office. The room was about the same size and layout as the room in the leaky cauldron, except that there was an extra desk. "Your former roommate, Macon, is going to college. I guess you won't see him again in the future, so I moved his bed. It's just right that we can chat after dinner tonight," Dean Feynman said with bright eyes. "The brats here are all very naughty, unlike you who were mature and steady when you were a child. I can't talk to them." Joel looked into Dean Feynman's eyes and nodded in agreement. He didn't want to stay in the orphanage at first, but today he came here to ask why he became an orphan and got 2 different answers. Did Dean Feynman really mix it up? Joel didn't quite believe it. Many children in the orphanage were abandoned, or their parents died in accidents. Few parents took the initiative to send their children to the orphanage. Dean Feynman must have been deeply impressed by this rare event. How could he mix it up? He always felt something was wrong. He left the orphanage and went to the leaky cauldron to take his luggage and owl back. He kept thinking about this problem on the way there and back. A lot of things happened 10 years ago in 1981. The one that Joel remembers most is the boy who survived the catastrophe, Harry Potter. Because of the blood magic set up by his mother Lily, Voldemort did not succeed in killing him, and the killing curse backfired on himself. So would the parents of the original owner of the body have any connection with Voldemort and the Order of the Phoenix? Maybe they are not ordinary muggles, but wizards with extraordinary magic power. Joel felt that the original owner's life experience was shrouded in a fog, making him confused. He wanted to take advantage of this holiday to find out the problem of his life experience and solve his worries. Is this an owl? In the office of the director of the Woos orphanage, Dean Feynman looked at Bobby who was sleeping in the cage curiously. Yes, the school teacher gave each student one, so we tried to raise them. Your school is really good. The green-robed woman who came to pick you up before looks like a good teacher. Dean Feynman muttered, and Joel understood that she was talking about Professor McGonagall. There are not many orphans in the Woos orphanage. With Joel and Dean Feynman, there are only 7 people, including the 2 boys Joel saw in the corridor. The funds allocated by the government to the orphanage and the orphans are sufficient. At least the food level is not much worse than that of Hogwarts, and there is a meal of milk biscuits in the evening to help them grow. Joel chatted with Dean Feynman until lights out before going back. The old woman seemed to have been unable to find a suitable person to talk to for a long time. She was eager to tell Joel everything she had seen and heard in the past year. Even her son, who also worked at the London Stock Exchange but had not been seen for a year or so, became the object of her complaints. Joel listened silently most of the time. He knew that the old woman had been suppressed for a long time. There was only Dean Feynman, a real adult in this orphanage. On weekdays, she could not find any way to tell, and could only do her job silently. In a way, she was as lonely as the children in Woos orphanage. Please recommend. Chapter 66, Bullying. During the few days he stayed at the Woos orphanage, Joel was alone, and did not communicate with other children in the orphanage. Usually after lunch and dinner, he would go to the director's office and chat with Director Feynman, while trying to get secrets about his life experience without leaving any trace. But Director Feynman seemed to have really forgotten the reason why Joel was admitted to the hospital. No matter how he tried to ask around, he could not get any valuable information. These 2 days, Director Feynman happened to be counting the number and names of orphans adopted by the Woos orphanage over the past few decades, so Joel took the initiative to help Director Feynman. She obviously trusted Joel very much. This morning, the Social Security Advisory Committee asked her to discuss something, and Director Feynman simply let him sort it out alone in his office. Joel kept flipping forward. 1960, 1940. In 1926, there was only one orphan admitted to the hospital that year, Tom Riddle. He has another more terrifying name in the magic world, Voldemort. He did not come to Woos orphanage to delete the files he had left here. Maybe he had always hated this place and didn't want to come back, or maybe he didn't want to do so. Joel didn't care about that. He opened the file bag. There were only 2 pages of paper in it. They were yellow and old, and it seemed that they could be torn into pieces with a little effort. The 2 pieces of paper stated the reason why Tom Riddle entered Woos orphanage. Mero Riddle gave birth to a son in Woos orphanage and named him Tom Riddle. 1 hour after giving birth, Mero Riddle died of heavy bleeding. Due to lack of information, he could not contact his father and could only be raised by Woos orphanage temporarily. Joel put the file back after reading it and quickly sorted out the information of the remaining orphans in the filing cabinet. Stretching, Joel left the office to go outside for some fresh air. As soon as he arrived in the corridor, he saw 3 children curled up in the corner and let the other 2 punch and kick them. The perpetrators were the 2 children Joel had seen in the corridor before, and Joel hurried forward and pushed them away. The two children were about to yell at him, but when they turned around and saw that it was Joel, they lowered their heads immediately, timid and afraid to look him in the face. The other three children were younger than them, with bruises on their faces and blood flowing from the corners of their mouths. "Why are you fighting?" Joel frowned and asked. His tone was not good. Dean Feynman would definitely be angry when he saw the children's injuries. Perhaps provoked by his tone, the abuser raised his head and looked at Joel with resentment. "Don't think you are great just because you can do some magic, Joel Taylor. We are not afraid of your trick of making things fly around. I'm the boss of this orphanage." The abuser was aggressive. Joel glanced over and found that he had a typical ordinary face. He knew at a glance that he didn't have much role. After all, handsome people like him were the protagonists in the story. Magic tricks? Joel's heart moved, but his face remained calm. He looked at the three victims lying on the ground. "What happened?" "He stole our chocolate, and we wanted to take it back, but they beat us," one of them complained, covering half of his face. Another pretty and cute little girl burst into tears. "We saved up our pocket money for a long time to buy it." She was protected by the other two companions before, and her face was not injured, but her blonde hair was torn into a mess. Joel couldn't bear it. "Where's the chocolate?" Professor Xie stiffened his neck and blushed. "We shared it between the two of us." He clenched his fists. He was just bragging before, but he was still a little scared. If he really had to fight with Joel in real life. He still clearly remembered that last year Joel let his pencils fly in the air and hit his head one by one. Dean Feynman was not there, and Joel couldn't do anything about them. Seeing that the little girl kept crying, he went back to the room and got a few pieces of Honeydukes candy. "Here, take some for each of you three." Joel didn't like sweets, and the candies had been in his bag for a long time without being eaten. He simply shared them among the three of them, and then turned to look at the two violent boys. "Let's wait for Dean Feynman to come back to deal with this matter. Taylor, you have been good at snitching since you were a child," the passerby sneered. He looked at the exquisite candies in Joel's hand, his eyes full of naked jealousy. "Do you think you can protect them? Wait until you and the dean are gone and see how I deal with them." Joel frowned. What the passerby said was not wrong. At this time, Dean Feynman hurried into the corridor, holding a pile of documents in his hand, with a little anxiety on his face. The moment she saw the children, she breathed a sigh of relief. "What's wrong, Dean Feynman?" Joel went to meet him. Dean Feynman waved the documents in his hand. "The notice has come down. The groundbreaking will start next week. The Wu's orphanage will be disbanded early." "So soon?" Joel frowned. Hearing this news, the little girl beside him stopped crying, and the two violent boys also stopped talking. "That's right. The real estate group spent a lot of money. The construction of the office building is too long to wait for us. The Social Security Advisory Committee asked us to quickly transfer the remaining orphans to other institutions," Dean Feynman explained to Joel while walking to the office. "What's going on?" When she saw the miserable appearance of the children, Joel quickly told her everything. Dean Feynman sighed. "I don't have time to deal with this matter now. Joel, please help solve it." After she finished speaking, she went into the office. The two abusers leaned against the wall in despair. Their wills were depressed, and Wu's orphanage was the only home they could rely on. In the blink of an eye, they heard the news that they were going to be sent to other orphanages. Would the children there hug each other and bully them by relying on their strong bodies? The two children panicked. Children who grew up in orphanages have always been more mature in their thinking. They understand the principle of the survival of the fittest. "Apologize first," Joel came to the two, "then stand outside for a night and go back to the dormitory when it's time to sleep." The two were filled with fear of the unknown future, so they naturally had no mood to dwell on this matter. Under Joel's gaze, they apologized to the three people, then ran outside the house and stood against the wall. "How is it? Is it delicious?" Joel squatted down and looked at the little girl, who was about 6 or 7 years old, holding the strawberry candy Joel gave her and chewing it. The girl's eyes narrowed into slits when she smiled. "It tastes great." Joel rubbed the little girl's blonde hair, distributed the remaining candies to the other two little boys, and then knocked on the office door. Chapter 67. Similarity. After getting permission, Joel opened the door. Dean Freeman was faxing the list Joel had sorted out to the Social Security Advisory Committee. "Joel, help me move the files in the cabinet. The government will send a specialist to check and report in 2 days." The two worked together to sort out the files and account books and only sat down to rest after confirming that they were correct. Dean Freeman brewed a pot of black tea. The hot steam filled the small office and the fragrant smell of black tea made people drowsy. Joel felt that this was an opportunity to talk. He took the initiative to pour a cup of hot tea for Dean Freeman. "When do you plan to leave?" "Of course, I will wait until the children of Wu's orphanage are completely settled." Dean Freeman sighed and took a sip of hot tea. "I can't leave these children. I saw his information when I was sorting out the files this morning." Joel pulled out Tom Riddle's file from the pile of files with an unknown smile on his lips. "Dean Freeman, do you know where his father is?" "This is." Dean Freeman took the file bag and took a look at it. "Tom Riddle, I remember this kid. He left a very deep impression on me. The summer after I graduated from college, I came to Wu's orphanage with full enthusiasm, wanting to do something big. Tom lived here at the time. He was older than you are now." Dean Freeman opened his heart and began to recall. "He never causes trouble for anyone. He is as well behaved, sensible, considerate, handsome, and elegant as you." The Bendine, Mrs. Cole, liked him very much. Dean Freeman glanced at Joel. "Hiss. I just remembered that he was in the same school as you." Joel raised his eyebrows and stared at Dean Freeman without blinking. "Really? I remember the name is a bit difficult to pronounce, and it's a private boarding school." Dean Freeman looked at Joel's handsome face and found that this boy was quite similar to Tom more than 50 years ago, with a flawless face, a slightly raised smile at the corners of his mouth, and a calm demeanor in the face of things. Joel nodded, guessing that the school name used by Dumbledore when he came to pick up Tom for school was the same as when Professor McGonagall picked him up. "What else?" Joel asked softly. "Where did Tom go later?" Dean Freeman pondered for a moment. "He disappeared without a trace after graduating from that boarding school. When the war broke out, Mrs. Cole didn't look for him. Maybe he joined the army and died on the front line. I saw in the file that Tom's mother died of heavy bleeding. Where was his father?" Joel asked softly with his eyebrows lowered, looking at the teacup in his hand. The orange slice in the cup swirled and hit the wall of the cup and bounced back. The social conditions at that time did not allow us to notify the whole country to find the child's father. Dean Freeman poured himself another cup of tea. "Notify twice in the streets and alleys, and if you can't find the biological father, take him into an orphanage. The conditions in orphanages nowadays are much better. Have you seen Oliver Twist? The orphanages in Britain were still the same more than 50 years ago." Dean Freeman said disdainfully. The conversation about Tom came to an end. Dean Freeman changed the topic. "What about you, Joel? After the Wu's orphanage is taken over, don't you plan to find a family to adopt you? With your conditions, you can definitely find a well-off family. Many upper-class ladies don't have children." Joel shook his head. "I don't have this plan yet." It was late at night. The two boys who were standing against the wall rubbed their sore and weak legs and returned to their rooms. Joel got up and said goodbye because it was getting late. Back in his room, Joel lay on the bed with his arms resting on his head and looked at the ceiling. As Dean Freeman said, Joel also found that he and Tom Riddle had many similarities. The coincidence made people suspicious. Could it be that he had taken over the script of the second generation of the Dark Lord and wanted to overthrow Dumbledore and the British Ministry of Magic? After thinking for a while, Joel realized that he had entered a misunderstanding. His calmness was a protective shell disguised when facing strangers. When facing familiar people, he was a very naughty and talkative person, which was completely different from Tom Riddle. Tom had a hard time finding true friends at school, but Joel had 3 roommates, as well as the goddess of luck Haley and other classmates. The warm feeling of being surrounded by everyone when he won the college cup lingered in his mind when he recalled it. "I definitely didn't accept the villain script. How could I, a handsome guy, become a noseless snake-eyed monster shouting avid or eating a big melon?" Joel shook his head repeatedly and drove the idea out of his mind. Due to the demolition of the Wu orphanage, Joel was ultimately unable to solve the mystery of his life experience. This orphanage with decades of history, which nurtured and raised nearly 1,000 orphans to adulthood, came to an end. All the children were transferred to another orphanage in the suburbs of London, except Joel. He successfully lobbied Dean Feynman, and with her help, Joel left the orphanage on the pretext of returning to boarding school early, and returned to room 11 upstairs in the leaky cauldron. On the third day after the demolition of the Wu orphanage, Joel went to King's Cross Station to see off Dean Feynman. She was going back to her hometown of Wiltshire, where she still had a lot of land, and the pension, provided by the government, was enough for her to live a worry-free life. After leaving King's Cross Station, Joel took the bus to wander around. When he was in the mood, he would get off the bus and walk for a few steps. It didn't matter if he got lost, the night bus could take him back to the leaky cauldron. This was a bustling commercial street. Joel saw Muggle clothing stores on both sides of the street. Muggles bought clothes here, and it was very lively. Not long after walking, Joel suddenly saw a familiar back. "Sergi?" he asked uncertainly. The back was stunned for a moment, and turned around. It was really Sergi Rowe, his good roommate. "Why are you here?" Joel came forward with a look of surprise. I came out shopping for nothing." Sergi avoided the question. "There are so many muggles here. You came out shopping with a lunchbox?" Joel looked at the object in Sergi's hand with suspicion. Sergi's pale cheeks flushed. "Okay," he muttered a little frustrated. "My grandpa is under observation at St. Mungo's Hospital for magical maladies and injuries, and I'm here to bring him food." Street Mungo's? Joel had naturally heard of this famous hospital. He looked forward along the direction Sergi pointed, and saw the name of the store that seemed to be closed down not far in front of him. Tao Tao Department Store. It was the entrance to St. Mungo's Hospital for magical maladies and injuries. "Is there anything I can help you with?" Joel took the initiative to ask. Sergi hesitated for a moment and then refused. After saying goodbye to Joel, he stepped into the store window alone and disappeared into the crowd. Chapter 68, Meeting in Diagon Alley. Joel saw this and did not pursue further. Since Sergi said so, he certainly did not want him to investigate further. As an experienced man, Joel knew the way of life very well. Sergi was not his close friend or relative. People should keep their distance when getting along with each other. Asking questions blindly would make people feel disgusted. Joel had lunch at a French restaurant outside at noon. When he returned to the room of the leaky cauldron, he received a package and a letter sent by Owl. It was sent by Professor Claire White. Joel opened the envelope first. "Joel, I'm writing to you. I hope you are having a good time recently. I have arrived in Paris. It is sunny here, which is much more acceptable than the rainy and humid climate in London. Boxburton's School of Magic has provided us with a residence for Constantine to recover. By the way, he insisted that I thank you in the letter. The rule of the Soviet Union is crumbling. I heard that Ukraine and Belarus are also planning to withdraw from the alliance. Andrei Ulyanov is now too busy to pursue Constantine. Since the food in the UK is even more monotonous than that in the Soviet Union, I specially sent you a bottle of French foie gras. You can try it. In addition, I cleaned up the house in Hogsmeade before leaving and found the hammer you left behind, so I sent it to you. I hope we can keep in touch. I wish you a happy summer vacation." The hammer of repentance is still lying in his suitcase. Now this indestructible hammer is of no use, so just keep it for cracking nuts. The foie gras tastes really good, and it successfully helped Joel get through the first half of the vacation. The hot summer vacation passed quickly, and Joel did not lose contact with Alan and Eddie. They decided to go to Diagon Alley on August 15th to purchase school supplies for the new school year. They all failed to contact Sergi. It was as if he had suddenly disappeared from this world. The letters sent by roommates were like a stone sinking into the sea and never returned. Therefore, when the three of them met again, Alan's first words were, "Have you heard from Sergi?" Eddie snorted coldly, "I think he just doesn't want to reply to us. Actually, I saw Sergi at the door of St. Mungo's Hospital a month ago. He was going to take care of his grandfather at that time." Joel shrugged. Maybe he was too busy to write back. Alan frowned worriedly when he heard this, and Eddie put his arm around Alan's shoulders. "Don't worry about him. Come out happily today to buy a flying broom with me." He took the two of them to the Quidditch boutique. There were a lot of customers in Diagon Alley today. The new students received their admission letters, and many parents chose to come out to buy supplies today. The Quidditch boutique is located in the bustling area of Diagon Alley. A Nimbus 2000 is placed in the shop window, and a group of children of all ages are gathered together to listen to the clerk explain its excellent performance. For only 500 gold galleons, you can have the same broom as the Irish national Quidditch team. The clerk memorized the introduction of the Nimbus 2000 by heart. This is the fastest broom in the world, no doubt about it. The sideswipe broom is nothing in front of it. Its straight line acceleration is 40% slower than that of the Nimbus 2000. Just imagine, if in a match you are riding a Nimbus 2000 as a seeker and your opponent is riding a sideswipe broom, and you both see the golden snitch at the same time, and you both accelerate at the same time. Then I will definitely get the golden snitch first. A little boy with bright eyes. He was short and fat, and his raised arms were chubby, like lotus roots. He tilted his head and shook the girl's hand beside him. Sister, I want this Nimbus 2000. Bernie, you're only in the first grade. There's no need to use such a good broom. Joel suspected that he was hallucinating, and took 2 steps closer to confirm that the fat boy's sister was actually Haley. Besides, the Hogwarts Quidditch team only starts recruiting people from the 2nd grade. It's too early for you to buy now. Long time no see, classmate Selwyn. Eddie also found his classmates and stepped forward to greet Haley. Haley glanced at Eddie, frowned slightly, and then nodded. Hello, Mr. Carmichael. When she saw Joel beside Eddie, her face suddenly turned from cloudy to sunny, and her eyebrows and eyes relaxed slightly. Long time no see, Joel. Eddie muttered something about differential treatment and the era of looking at faces. He didn't know how Haley and Joel became familiar with each other, and thought Haley was attracted by Joel's appearance. Joel shared his holiday life with Haley with a smile on his face. The fat Bernie beside him was not happy. He pulled Haley's hand back, leaving a large space between Joel and Haley. Sister, I want that Nimbus 2000. Can you buy it for me? He began to blink and squeeze tears to act pitiful. Haley looked helpless and didn't know what to do with this brother. Eddie joined in the fun at this time. He ran to the clerk to order a Nimbus 2000. The gold galleons he saved last school year finally came in handy. After paying 500 galleons neatly, Eddie walked out of the Quidditch boutique with the Nimbus 2000 wrapped in butter paper. This move received a burst of exclamations from the surrounding children, who all wanted to touch the brand new broom in Eddie's hand. Eddie went to Fat Bernie, peeled off the butter paper, and revealed the shiny Nimbus 2000 inside. He reached out and stroked the broom, closing his eyes and sighing that it felt great. Bernie was anxious all of a sudden. He insisted that Haley buy him a Nimbus 2000, otherwise he would lie on the ground and not move. He had already started to release tear bombs to win the sympathy of the people around him. Aren't you being a rogue? Haley's face flushed with anger as she heard the whispers of the children around her. Joel was still here. What should she think of this situation? Is the Selwyn family's tutoring so bad? Not to mention that there are so many classmates here. If Bernie lay on the ground and rolled around to get the broom today, tomorrow the British wizard pureblood aristocratic circle would spread the news that shocking. The heir of the Selwyn family fell to the ground in the street just for it. It will definitely bring shame to the Selwyn family. Haley was taught to put family honor first since she was a child. At this time, she felt helpless and had to agree to Bernie's request. Get up, can't I buy it for you? She said helplessly. 500 gold galleons. It seems that I have to save my pocket money this semester, and there are many people who need to buy Christmas gifts. Thank you, sister, I knew that you are the best to me. Bernie's face changed instantly, from cloudy to sunny, and he swallowed the tears in his eyes. He followed Haley into the Quidditch boutique with a smile on his face to pay. The 5 people simply went together. On the way to Florin's ice cream shop, Haley introduced Bernie to the others. This is my younger brother Bernie Selwyn, who will also be enrolled this year. The few people exchanged names and identities and knew each other. After sitting down in the ice cream shop, Joel took the initiative to order. When he returned to the outdoor seat with 5 large boxes of ice cream, he suddenly heard a childish voice calling him. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel. Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69, Mr. Ollivander and the Wand. Following the voice, it turned out to be Ron. He was standing next to his mother, Mrs. Weasley, holding a rusty old crucible in his hand. Joel distributed the ice cream in his hand to the other 4 people, and then walked out quickly. It must have been more than half a year since we last met, Mrs. Weasley. After bowing slightly and greeting Ron, Joel and Mrs. Weasley chatted. Yes, Ron will go to school in a blink of an eye. Mrs. Weasley smiled and touched Ron's head, but he was impatiently avoided. Joel noticed that Ron had been staring at the children sitting on the open-air seats of Florin's cold drink shop and chatting with ice cream, with a little desire in his eyes. Joel returned to his seat, took his share of ice cream from Haley, and gave it to Ron. Take it, you're welcome. I just bought an extra box. Mrs. Weasley hesitated for a moment and did not refuse. Ron saw his mother's expression and took it in his hand and licked it with confidence. Haley, who was sitting on a chair not far away, saw this scene and got up to go to the store to find the owner, Florin Fusco. What flavor do you want? Thanks to the hot weather today and the crowded crowd in Diagon Alley, the cold drink shop was doing a booming business today. Mr. Fusco looked at the coins piled up in the cash register and laughed happily. HMM. Haley recalled what flavor of ice cream she had helped Joel get before, blueberry and raspberry combination. When she returned to her seat with the ice cream, Joel had already sent Ron and Mrs. Weasley away. He hadn't told Ron and Mrs. Weasley his real age yet. Although he looked taller than Ron, neither of them had any doubts. This gave him a sense of pleasure that his prank was successful. Here. Haley handed over the ice cream in her hand. Joel took a look at the sauce in the box, then looked up at Haley and reached out to take it. Bernie Selwyn looked at the blush on his sister's face and then looked at Joel's handsome face, and the uneasy premonition in his heart became stronger. He planned to go home and tell his parents about it, but the brand new Nimbus 2000 in his hand was bought by his sister. Would it be ungrateful to do so? Bernie hesitated. After resting at Florin's ice cream shop, the 5 of them went their separate ways. Joel, Alan and Eddie were going to Flourish and Blotts to buy textbooks for the new semester, while the Selwyn siblings were going to Ollivander's wand shop to buy wands. Speaking of wands, the original owner of his body had already bought a wand when he crossed over. Although Joel could cast spells with it, he always felt that something was missing. It was not as smooth as using his arm. When his soul crossed over, the original owner's magic power was lost. It seemed that even the wand did not recognize him as a guy who had taken over the nest. How about taking this opportunity to go to Ollivander's wand shop to buy another wand? This idea lingered in his mind as soon as it appeared. Joel bought all the textbooks in the crowded Flourish and Blotts bookstore according to the book list sent by Hogwarts in early August. After paying, he asked the old acquaintance bookstore manager to send an owl to the leaky cauldron. I have something to do. You two can go directly to Madame Malkin's robe shop. We will meet there. Alan was immersed in the potion journal and nodded slightly after hearing Joel's words. Joel left Flourish and Blotts bookstore and walked straight forward along Diagon Alley for 100 meters. He saw Ollivander's wand shop. Compared with other shops, Ollivander's wand shop looked small and shabby. The golden sign at the door was severely eroded by wind. In the not-so-tidy window, a wand was placed alone on the faded purple cushion. Through the glass, he could see Bernie choosing a wand inside, and Haley was sitting quietly on a bench in the corner with a flying broom. Joel pushed the door open and entered. The sound of the wind chimes at the door reminded the shop owner that another buyer had come. Ollivander was tall and thin, with a pair of silver-white eyes staring intently at Bernie in front of him, and he was amazed. Joel was not surprised by this. Ollivander would praise almost every customer who bought a wand. At the same time, Ollivander could remember the information of the parents of all customers who came here to buy wands. Joel suspected that Ollivander must have a small notebook with the characteristics of all the owners of the wands sold, and he would review it every day. Wait. Joel felt that he had grasped a clue. Bernie bought a walnut wand with dragon heart tendon. Ollivander bowed his head to pack the wand into a wooden box, while greeting the customer. Hello, how can I help you? Mr. Ollivander, I'm here to buy a wand. Joel nodded and greeted Haley. Ah. Mr. Taylor, right? Sure enough, Ollivander still recognized his name after a year. Haley and Bernie looked over. Joel, who was about to enter the 2nd grade, came here to buy a wand. Mr. Taylor, can I ask about the whereabouts of the wand made of vinewood and phoenix feathers last year? Ollivander frowned and asked. I accidentally broke it. Joel remained calm and his heart was not beating. The wand was lying in his pocket. Ollivander stared at Joel's eyes closely. His silver eyes seemed to be able to see through people's hearts and lies. I'm a wand merchant. From this perspective, I should of course sell you another wand. Ollivander's tone was very regretful, but I must say that it is difficult for you to find a wand that fits your body so well. I'm happy to help you repair the broken wand. Sorry, sir, I decided to buy another one. Joel said apologetically. Haley was about to ask Joel when he broke the wand, but seeing that he kept winking at her, she wisely kept silent. Okay. Ollivander didn't say anything more. He took out a tape measure and began to measure Joel's physical data, including arm length, length of fingers on his dominant hand, and even leg length. The Selwyn siblings were not in a hurry to leave and just watched quietly. Try this one. Ashwood with phoenix feathers, 10 inches. After measuring the data, Ollivander took out a wand box from the shelf behind him. Joel took out the wand and waved it in the air, and the tip of the wand emitted a flash of fire. No, try this one. Ollivander took the wand back and handed him another one. Joel waved one wand after another tirelessly. He felt that there was a barrier between him and each wand, and he couldn't use all his magic. The wand boxes on the table piled higher and higher until Ollivander's wand stock was almost gone, and Joel's system prompted. Please vote for recommendation. Chapter 70, The Beginning of Everything. The host has been indomitable and has tried the wands hundreds of times just to find the one that belongs to him. Congratulations on triggering the reward task, a unique wand. The host can collect the following items to make a powerful wand that belongs to him. Required materials: unicorn hair, 0/1, holly branches, 0/1, the host's own fresh blood, 0/1. Note, the raw materials of the wand are very demanding. Please prepare the materials according to the system instructions and make the wand. After the system prompts, a white booklet appears in the inventory. Joel clicks with his mind and complex information floods into his brain. In the eyes of the other 3 people in the wand shop, Joel seems to be in a daze. The wand in his hand is motionless, and he doesn't even blink. Joel, Haley called softly. Joel suddenly came back to his senses. Too much information just flooded into his brain, causing him to be a little absent-minded. He put down the wand in his hand. Thank you, Mr. Ollivander. I don't think there is a better wand here for me. I think I should go back and think about how to repair the previous one. Ollivander sighed. If necessary, I can provide necessary help to Mr. Taylor. By the way, Jolden stopped. I remember when I came here last year, you said that I looked like my mother? Really? Ollivander was a little suspicious. I don't remember saying this. I don't even know your mother's name. Let's say goodbye first, Mr. Ollivander. The considerate Haley knew that the following content was not suitable for her to listen to. She quickly took her brother Berner's hand, pushed open the door of the wand shop and walked out. Joel, see you at Hogwarts. Watching the Selwyn siblings leave the wand shop, Joel retracted his gaze. My mother's name is Charlotte Taylor. Do you still remember it? This is the name that Joel asked Dean Feynman of the Wood Orphanage to investigate at the Social Security Advisory Committee. Ollivander frowned, took out a thick notebook from the drawer under the counter, and turned to the middle. There really is a small notebook. Ollivander's wand passed over the notebook, and the slightly yellowed pages of the notebook turned quickly, and in an instant it had turned to the end. There is no such person. What about Moss and Taylor? Joel still did not give up. Ollivander snapped the notebook shut. The owner of every wand I sold left his name in this book. Unfortunately, there are no 2 names like Mr. Taylor you mentioned. Joel originally planned to use Ollivander's hand to find out the information about his parents, but the result disappointed him greatly. Were his parents really ordinary muggles who died in a car accident? But what about Dean Feynman's memory? The truth is confusing, as if it was surrounded by a fog. Joel always felt that the original owner of the body was not that simple. He said goodbye to Ollivander with a lot of thoughts in his heart and came to Madame Malkin's robe store. Alan and Eddie were already sitting in the store. "Where have you been?" Alan saw him rushing here with many beads of sweat on his forehead. "I went to Ollivander's one shop to see if there were any want care tools." Joel's face was natural. Alan saw that he had nothing in his hands. Obviously he didn't buy anything. He secretly wondered whether to give Joel a want care set for Christmas this year. The last witch left the store with a lot of bags, and now there were only a few of them in the store. "Come on, dear Madame Malkin," wearing a purple robe, with a smile on her chubby face, looked quite festive. "Do you want to order Hogwarts robes?" "Yes, please take 5 sets of brand new standard robes. The body grows too fast." Joel and the other two asked for 5 sets each. Having enough clothes to change can save a lot of laundry time and can do a lot more things. Now is the time to grow up. It will be much better after the body is shaped in 2 years. Madame Malkin smiled more obviously after hearing the needs of the 3 of them. It was another big business. Madame Malkin took them to the back of the store, where there was a row of footstools and fitting mirrors. Under her arrangement, Joel and the other two stood on the footstools and let Madame Malkin put a robe on them. Then the pins began to measure the size automatically, and she recorded the data on the side. The sound of wind chimes rang at the door of the store, and Madame Malkin stopped her work to greet the guests. It was a pale and thin little boy with light golden hair carefully groomed with hair mud. His expression was arrogant and indifferent, just like surgery. 5 sets of robes, ma'am. The boy said so. Madame Malkin quickly took him to the back of the store. The boy frowned imperceptibly when he saw Joel and Eddie. When his eyes shifted to Alan, the corners of his mouth rose slightly. "How long have we not seen each other?" But the boy took the initiative to talk to Alan. "More than a year." Alan replied softly, "I can't remember." Eddie's eyes wandered between the boy and Alan, and the two obviously knew each other. Joel felt that the identity of this boy was about to be revealed. Draco Malfoy. During his time at school, he was extremely keen on finding trouble with his archenemy Harry Potter, and focused all his attention on this scarred man, even more than on his girlfriend. "Are they your classmates?" Malfoy glanced at Joel and Eddie's faces, obviously not taking the two strangers seriously, and then his eyes moved slightly downwards, staying on the flying broom that Eddie never put down. "My roommate." "Flying broom?" Malfoy became interested. "What model is it?" At this time, someone else pushed open the door and walked in, and Madame Malkin hurried to greet him. "I have always wanted my father to buy me a new Nimbus 2000. I heard that the performance is very excellent." Eddie ignored Malfoy and let him talk to himself there. "But even if I buy a broom, I can't take it to school. I really don't understand why first year students at Hogwarts can't have their own flying broom." "Have you played Quidditch?" Malfoy cast his eyes on the child, who had just entered the door. Emerald green eyes, black hair sticking out everywhere, short and thin. His round glasses were tangled together with a lot of transparent tape. It seems that he is short of money to buy a new pair of glasses. "Harry Potter?" Malfoy's sudden question made Harry stunned for a second. He was thinking about what Quidditch was, and replied, "No. I have played it." Malfoy seemed proud of it. "My dad said it would be a shame if I couldn't be selected for the school Quidditch team. Please vote for recommendation." Chapter 71. The long-awaited first day of school. "I forgot to mention that my whole family is from Slytherin College," Malfoy said with a bit of pride. "That place can really cultivate talents. If I were assigned to Hufflepuff, I might as well drop out. It's simply a concentration camp for idiots." His words were full of disdain. Harry was confused as he listened to him. He had always lived with Aunt Petunia, and had never heard of names like Slytherin and Hufflepuff. He felt that he was terrible and knew nothing. Joel and Eddie felt uncomfortable when they heard Malfoy's words. They had been in Hogwarts for a school year, and had a more comprehensive and profound understanding of the 4 colleges. Although many Hufflepuff students were timid and loved to gossip, they were also warm-hearted. If you get lost in the castle, Slytherin students will snort and ignore you. Ravenclaw students will half mock you and ask you to think carefully with your not so bright brain. Gryffindor students will take the initiative to point you to a wrong road where Peeves is waiting with a water balloon. Only Hufflepuff students will help you sincerely and may even take you to the kitchen to find the house elf to fill your hungry stomach with 2 servings of tea. Alan's pale face flushed. Malfoy, what you said is too much. Malfoy shrugged his shoulders nonchalantly. It doesn't matter. There won't be any Hufflepuffs here, right? Of course there are, sir. Madam Malkin's voice came from behind Malfoy, startling him. She looked unhappy, and Malfoy blushed a little, pursed his lips and kept silent. Madam Malkin's pen tip flew across the parchment, with much greater force than before. The atmosphere in the robe shop was quiet and a little awkward. Harry also stepped on the footstool under Madam Malkin's arrangement, and stretched out his arms for her to measure the size. Look at the big fool outside. Malfoy's face was red and feverish. He was eager to divert everyone's attention. Everyone looked in the direction of his finger. A strong and powerful man with a beard was standing outside the window of the robe shop, holding 2 chocolate hazelnut ice creams in his hands. Seeing that everyone's eyes were turned to him, the big man showed an honest smile. He waved to Harry, and the movement was a little too big, causing a large piece of ice cream in his hand to fly out. What a fool. Malfoy was eager to find something to criticize and prove himself. He is a servant at Hogwarts, right? I heard from my father that he once burned down the wooden house while playing with his wand, and asked my father and the board of directors to pay for him to repair it. Hagrid is not a fool, nor a servant. Harry said coldly. He is a gamekeeper of Hogwarts. Really? Malfoy snorted. Just when the conflict was about to break out, Madam Malkin suddenly said that Joel and the other 2 had already taken their measurements, and within a week after they paid, the robes would be sent to the address they left by owl. The 3 of them left the robe shop, as if they were fleeing. I've never seen such an ignorant and arrogant person. Eddie clenched the broom in his hand. Who is he? Draco Malfoy, the only heir of the Malfoy family, Alan said in a muffled voice. Seeing Eddie's confused face, he obviously didn't know the Malfoy family, so he explained. The Malfoy family is known as the richest family in the UK. Their land and shops are all over the UK. They own inestimable gold galleons. They are also the directors of Hogwarts. So exaggerated. Eddie took a breath, and then set a small goal for himself. I must build a business empire bigger than the Malfoy family in my life. Joel and Alan smiled at each other. Both of them thought Eddie was joking. The Malfoy family had accumulated for dozens of generations to have a current strong financial resources. In Joel's impression, the Malfoy family did not fall even after Voldemort's complete defeat and death. The foundation can be seen. The 3 of them enjoyed a sandwich at a restaurant outside Diagon Alley and agreed to meet at Hogwarts on September 1st. For the rest of the day, Joel stayed in the room of the leaky cauldron to sort out the information about making a wand in his mind. The length of the holly branches must be about 15 inches, and they must be straight without any signs of bending. The collection time must be 8 PM on the Wednesday before the full moon on Thursday. After cutting the branches, they must be bathed in moonlight and the dew of the next morning, and then placed in a cool place to air dry. The unicorn hair used as the wand core must be collected on a full moon night, and a long paragraph of strange spells must be recited at the same time. The simplest step is to pour fresh blood and wrap the whole wand. The instructions for making the wand broke Joel's fantasy of going to the market to buy raw materials. It seems that he will have to find a way after arriving at Hogwarts. Joel can only use the wand at hand for the time being. September 1st came quickly, and Joel packed his luggage, moved out of the leaky cauldron, and took back his deposit from the owner Tom. It must be said that walking on the street with an owl in a cage is very eye-catching. Joel had no choice but to find a secluded alley and go in. He stretched out his wand to call the night bus and headed to King's Cross Station. Joel, who was thrown into a daze by the high-speed driving of the night bus, staggered into platform 9 with his suitcase. Thanks to the speed of the night bus, Joel successfully made it to the compartment of the Hogwarts train 40 minutes before departure. He threw his luggage on the upper shelf in a daze, then took out a book Chadwick's Magic from his bag, and read it carefully after he recovered. When he finished reading 2 chapters attentively, the train had already sounded a loud whistle. Many students came to the platform accompanied by their parents, reluctantly said goodbye to their families, and boarded the Hogwarts train. The train was filled with the voices of classmates who had not seen each other for a holiday and the repeated instructions of parents outside the train. Eddie dragged a suitcase that was not much shorter than himself to the compartment where Joel was. Joel hurried forward to help, and the two of them used all their strength to put the big suitcase on the shelf above their heads. "What did you bring?" Joel asked in confusion. "You'll know when you get to school." Eddie clapped his hands happily. "They are all treasures." By the way, Eddie took out a paper bag from his school bag and handed it to him. "Have you had breakfast? My dad made a beef sandwich this morning, and he asked me to bring you one." "Great." Joel was not polite, took it and started eating directly. A few days before the end of the holiday, he couldn't stand Tom, the owner of the Leaky Cauldron, who cooked breakfast, so he had to go out to the Muggle breakfast restaurant to buy some food. This morning, because he was conspicuous by carrying an owl cage, he didn't have time to have breakfast. The sandwich must have been cast with a heat preservation spell, and it was still warm in the hand. The sweet taste of malt, the full and plump taste of thick cut beef, and the sweet and sour taste of a small pickle were perfectly integrated under the high temperature baking. When you bite it, the taste of mushroom juice and onion juice inside is released at the same time, making the taste of beef more tender and diverse. It's delicious. Please recommend. Thank you Leo Wangshi for the 100 starting coins reward. Thank you Zinxiawa for the 100 starting coins reward. Chapter 72, Journey. After swallowing a beef sandwich, the Hogwarts train finally started moving slowly. The corridor was filled with the sound of suitcases hitting the ground, making a noisy noise. Alan leaned over the compartment door to look inside. When he saw Joel and Eddie, he happily opened the door and walked in with his suitcase. "Didn't you see surgery?" Eddie poked his head into the corridor and looked around. There were many students, but he didn't see surgery. With Joel's help, Alan put his luggage on the train and shook his head. "I was the last one to get on the train. I didn't see him in several carriages." Eddie let out a sigh and ran out to walk back and forth in the corridor of the carriage, hoping to find his roommate through the glass door of the compartment. After walking around twice, Eddie, who returned empty-handed, opened the compartment door in disappointment and collapsed on the seat. "I didn't realize you cared about surgery." Joel twisted his fingers and turned a page of the book. Eddie's ears turned red when he heard that. "Who cares about him? I'm just afraid that, if something happens to him, it will implicate us." This kind of excuse was meaningless to Joel and Alan. They knew that Eddie was just quarreling with surgery, but they were always concerned about him. At noon, there was a knock on the door of the compartment. A smiling woman pushed a cart and asked if they needed any snacks. The three of them bought a large bag of chocolate frogs and hotcakes, and deliberately avoided Bibi's multi-flavor beans. According to Eddie, "I'm tired of tasting all kinds of multi-flavor beans." Last school year, with the help of Alan, each of them tasted 5 or 6 boxes of multi-flavor beans, wrote a lot of experience reports, and earned dozens of gold galleons. During that time, all kinds of multi-flavor beans bombarded their mouths in turn. At first, there was some novelty, but later it turned into a boring and mechanical task. Several people filled their stomachs with sweet snacks. The weather was clear and bright in early autumn, and even the sunlight was dazzling. It shone through the glass window onto their side faces, making Alan and Eddie a little drowsy. The two simply leaned against the wall for a nap, while Joel sat on a chair and flipped through the textbooks for the new semester. After flipping through 2 pages of the potions textbook, he felt a little boring and simply went out for some fresh air. A boy was pacing around in the corridor anxiously, his eyes not missing every inch of the floor. "Excuse me, did you see a toad?" the boy asked when he saw Joel passing by him. Joel thought carefully and made sure that he didn't see any strange creatures after leaving the cubicle, so he shook his head to deny it. Hearing this answer, the boy's honest face was full of disappointment. Neville Longbottom, who almost became the boy who survived a disaster by accident, is an important character in the original book. He walked straight ahead. Many students were playing cards in the compartments. Poker seemed to be gaining popularity among Hogwarts students. The Selwyn siblings occupied a compartment. Bernie kept mumbling something, but Haley ignored him and lowered her head to review her textbook. When Joel looked inside, Haley seemed to have sensed something and also looked up. The two of them met eyes, and Haley pursed her lips and smiled. Joel turned around the carriages and indeed did not find surgery. As he walked, he bent over and stretched his calves, wondering where surgery had gone. Joel stretched all parts of his body, and after a set of movements, he felt relaxed, and his face was rosy. When he walked back, he saw a girl next to Neville. The two of them knocked on doors one by one to ask about the whereabouts of the toad. The girl had thick brown hair and a pair of big front teeth. She crossed her arms and raised her chin slightly, looking a little arrogant. Joel, who was familiar with the original plot, knew the girl's identity. Hermione Granger, a member of the original Iron Triangle, the mother of Harry and Ron, the key to defeating Voldemort, and the technical support of the trio. He knew that Hermione would meet Ron and Harry next, completing the first unpleasant encounter of the Iron Triangle. Joel didn't intend to get involved, and walked around Hermione and Neville to his compartment. Halfway through the road, he suddenly heard Ron shouting his name. He was stunned in place, and Ron jumped out of the compartment and grabbed his arm, introducing him to his good brother Harry, who had just met. "This is Joel Taylor. The two of us met in Diagon Alley last year, and he is also enrolled this year." Harry was stunned in place. He clearly saw Joel in Madame Malkin's robe shop. He also asked Madame Malkin, and she said that Joel and the other two came here to replace new standard robes because of their height growth. Obviously Joel is not a freshman who has just enrolled. Ron didn't notice it at all. Joel was only half a year older than him, and the height difference was not obvious. This is why he never doubted it. "Hello, Joel Taylor." Joel shook hands with Harry and blinked his eyes, as if hinting at something. Harry introduced himself to Joel dryly. "Harry Potter?" Hermione rushed over quickly like a shark smelling blood. "Is it really you?" She looked surprised. "I've seen your name in many books. Modern History of Magic. Important Magical Events of the 20th Century." Harry had never heard of these books. He stood there awkwardly, not knowing what to say. Joel spoke up to help him out. "Have you found your toad?" Hermione was stunned for a moment. Then she remembered what she and Neville were going to do, and hurriedly took him to move forward. Seeing the two leave, Ron took Joel to his compartment. "Joel, do you know how to sort?" "My brother Fred said that the sorting ceremony will hurt us a lot." Joel opened the compartment door and sat on the chair. "Yes, I heard that the freshmen have to fight a Welsh green dragon in the sorting ceremony." "Welsh green dragon?" Ron's face turned green. "Is it true?" Joel spread his hands. "I don't know. I heard it from others." "Yes, I heard it from your two brothers." Harry has not yet realized the seriousness of the matter. "Welsh green dragon? Is it scary?" "It can swallow us in one bite." Ron's voice trembled slightly, and he was already afraid. "So scary?" Harry's little face was pale, and the broken hair on his forehead fluttered, revealing the lightning scar. "I have friends there. I'll go back first." Joel was about to slip away, and the sliding door of the compartment opened again, and the thin Malfoy walked in with two little followers. This time Malfoy looked at Harry with much greater interest than in Madame Malkin's robe shop. "I heard that Harry Potter is in this compartment." Malfoy raised his chin. "If nothing unexpected happens, it's you, right? Please vote for recommendation." Chapter 73. New school year, new atmosphere. "Yes," Harry said slowly, his eyes wandering around the two henchmen beside Malfoy. "This is Goyle and Crabbe. Let me introduce myself. I'm Malfoy, Draco Malfoy." Malfoy coughed lightly and stretched out his right hand. Before Harry could say anything, Ron snorted coldly. Joel was standing aside pretending to be invisible. He just wanted to leave here, but Goyle and Crabbe, two broad-shouldered weirdos, stood side by side and blocked the door directly. Malfoy realized that Harry didn't want to shake hands with him, so he quickly retracted his hand and then treated Ron with a bit of anger. "Heh, you must be the Weasley child? The Weasley family is like rats. They stay in the same nest for life." Malfoy sneered mercilessly, his eyes lingering on Ron's robe that was a little white after washing. "I wonder if your fabric is enough to cover your buttocks." Ron was so excited that he wanted to punch Malfoy, but Goyle and Crabbe behind Malfoy fully played the role of bodyguards and pushed the thin Ron hard onto the chair. The force was a bit too strong, and Ron covered his waist and hissed softly, "Malfoy, you are too much." Joel couldn't help it this time and said, "Why are you here?" Malfoy only then noticed Joel next to Ron and Harry. He didn't remember Joel's name, but he was deeply impressed by his handsome face. Joel didn't answer him, but stood up straight. Although Joel didn't like the rough British diet, it was nutritious. He was 1.6 meters tall at the age of 12, and Malfoy could only reach his nose. The deterrent effect of height on children was quite amazing. Malfoy compared his height and wisely took a half step back, losing half the momentum. Malfoy reacted and pretended to be the most ferocious expression, to stare at Joel and the other two, but his hands did not move. He was afraid of Joel. Malfoy knew that Joel was Alan's classmate, and had completed a year of study at Hogwarts. He must have learned a few spells, and they didn't want to ask for trouble. Malfoy felt that it was beneath his dignity to walk away so humiliated, so he said a few more harsh words before leaving the compartment. "Are you okay?" Joel looked back at Ron. Ron held his waist and moved for a while. Joel confirmed that he was in good health before leaving the compartment. When Alan returned to his compartment, he was chatting with Haley, who was visiting, while Eddie was teasing Joel's owl Poppy. Seeing Joel push the door open, Alan, whose face was flushed, finally breathed a sigh of relief and threw Haley, whose cheeks were also pink, to Joel. "What's wrong?" Joel was a little puzzled. Haley moved 2 steps to the window to make room for him, and he sat down directly. "My brother is too noisy," Haley complained a little. "He keeps talking to me about Quidditch, but I can't understand the terms at all. I endured it for 7 hours and 15 minutes, and finally I couldn't bear it anymore." Haley held a copy of Pride and Prejudice in her hand. "I found a poor excuse to sneak out." "What excuse?" After a year of getting along, Joel knew that Haley was a typical people-pleasing personality, and generally would not refuse others. He was very curious about Haley's excuse for escaping from Bernie. Haley blushed, shook her head constantly, and refused to tell the reason. Joel couldn't continue to ask. "Well," Eddie coughed twice, "I'm curious, do you dote on your brother so much?" "That's a 500 galleon flying broom. He saved up this money for a long time. If it weren't for the objective sales of CLBT teaching materials, he wouldn't have been able to get so many gold coins." Haley hesitated. "But if I don't buy him this flying broom, he will definitely cry in public, and then my parents will punish me again. My parents dote on Bernie too much, almost always fulfilling his every request, making him feel that crying can solve all problems." Haley talked a lot today. Originally he was just tossing at home. Now he's in Hogwarts. I have to take care of his school life. He is my brother after all. I can't just ignore him. Besides, it's only 500 galleons. At most I can save the money by buying less jewelry this year. This sentence made Joel feel sour. "It's great to be rich." Eddie sighed. Hogwarts train slowed down. Outside the window, darkness had taken over the world. Joel could vaguely see the trees retreating through the thick darkness. "You should change into your robes." Haley said goodbye. She closed the book Pride and Prejudice that she had read a little bit. "We'll meet at the long table of the college later." She pushed the door open and walked out. Eddie winked at Joel, but he ignored her. The three of them changed into robes and got off the train. The luggage and owls would be transported directly to the dormitory by the house elves. The big Hagrid was guiding the first-year students on the platform as usual. Joel and the other two followed the crowd to another path, where hundreds of carriages were waiting for them. To be precise, the creatures pulling the carriages were called thestrals. What Joel was worried about happened. He could actually see the full appearance of this magical animal. The thestrals were skinny, with dragon-like heads and a pair of huge bone wings. Every bone in their bodies was clearly visible, as if they had never eaten a full meal. In the original book, only those who have witnessed death can see it. So whose death has Joel witnessed? The memory of the original owner of the body is getting blurred. Those memories that Joel thinks are very important are fading, but those trivial things are remembered very clearly. What is pulling the carriage? Eddie was very curious. He and Alan couldn't see the thestrals, and they were discussing it together. The carriage stumbled uphill all the way, past the gate of Hogwarts, and began to speed up continuously until the Hogwarts castle was in sight. The three jumped off the carriage and joined the crowd who stepped onto the stone steps of the castle and entered the brightly lit auditorium. The sorting ceremony was about to begin. The students sat down at the long tables of their respective colleges and began to whisper. Professor Dumbledore sat in the middle of the teacher's seat with his eyes closed. Except for Professor McGonagall, who was going to lead the freshmen. The other professors sat upright in the teacher's seat. I will never see Professor White's beautiful face again. Eddie was dejected. The new professor was a thin man wearing a purple turban and dressed like an Arab. Many students also noticed the new professor. Judging from his appearance, this thin man was much worse than Professor White. Joel was even more certain that the thin man was not only inferior in appearance, but also in his poor speaking ability in class. Chapter 74. Several cycles before the sorting ceremony, Haley and Qiu were sitting next to each other. Qiu looked at the book Pride and Prejudice in Haley's hand curiously. What is this? A Muggle novel? Haley smiled. Yes, I passed by a Muggle bookstore the other day and found the introduction of this book very interesting, so I bought it. She secretly glanced at Joel, who was discussing the new professor with his other two roommates. Then lend it to me later. Qiu Zhang smiled. I'm also curious about how Muggles live without magic. In the small room at the other end of the hall, the freshmen were waiting here, and Professor McGonagall was busy with the sorting ceremony. Ron. Harry hesitated for a moment, but decided to tell Ron what he knew. Joel Taylor is not a first-year freshman. When I went to Diagon Alley to buy robes, he told Ron everything about seeing Joel, and Ron's face turned pale. His eyes swept across the faces of every freshman in the room, and he really didn't see Joel, but he didn't care about Joel's concealment from him, but cared more about what Joel had said before. So we really have to fight the Welsh dragon? He was at a loss. That's what Fred said, and Joel said so too. Harry, you don't know how terrible the Welsh green dragon is. I think it's hard for me to survive the sorting ceremony. Ron's face was pale. He held Harry's robe tightly with his right hand. His body was trembling, and his legs and feet were a little weak. Neville Longbottom beside him was a little uneasy. Is it true? Of course, Ron said as a matter of course. I know why there are so few wizards in Britain. They probably didn't survive the sorting ceremony. The Welsh green dragon bit off their heads. They couldn't even put their bodies together when they were buried. At the end of his speech, Ron's eyes were red. In the quiet little house, Ron's words reached the ears of every freshman. Many students who knew little about Hogwarts turned pale, and the remaining students like Malfoy were not so kind to tell others. They stood aside and watched the joke. The honest Neville's tears were rolling, and he was about to cry. I knew it wasn't that simple. He stamped his feet impatiently. Neville, the toad he had just found when crossing the Black Lake, crawled out of his pocket and stared at his master with wide eyes. My grandma wants me to be as brave as my parents, but I can't even pass the sorting ceremony. Hermione, who was behind the three of them, crossed her arms and sneered. Miss Granger, who had spent a summer studying magic books, naturally knew what the real sorting ceremony of Hogwarts was. Now was a good time to show off her knowledge in front of everyone. She coughed twice, hoping to attract the attention and attention of the three. But Ron and the others were immersed in the fear of facing the dragon, and didn't notice Hermione at all. Hermione's childish temper surged up. She stepped forward and raised her chin proudly to the three of them. Let me tell you, we only need to wear a sorting hat during the sorting ceremony. We don't need to fight any dragons at all. That was all the old man's trick. Ron shook his head. He didn't believe Hermione's words at all. He was so simple and ignorant that he didn't think that a kind-hearted child who would give him ice cream would deceive him. Seeing that no one believed her, Hermione stamped her feet angrily and stood against the wall with her arms folded, not saying a word. At this time, Professor McGonagall walked in with a serious face and led the freshmen out of the room. Ron and others were in a state of anxiety. The long table of the college was filled with a joyful and peaceful atmosphere. The old students sat on the chairs and watched the little freshmen standing in a row in front of them. Professor McGonagall put the sorting hat on the four-legged stool and explained the rules of the sorting. Ron and others were completely dumbfounded. Ron found Joel's figure at the Ravenclaw long table. He was chatting and laughing with the girl next to him. He was very happy. Ron looked at this scene and hated it. Hannah Abbott, the iron-hearted little girl, jumped onto the four-legged stool, waiting for the arrangement of the sorting hat. Hufflepuff. Joel could almost recite the results of this year's sorting. Hermione and Neville went to Gryffindor, Malfoy went to Slytherin. The appearance of Harry Potter made the students and teachers of Hogwarts very excited. He could be called the most famous minor in the British wizarding world. The students wanted to see what this child who defeated the mysterious man looked like, to see if he had 3 heads and 6 arms, and could pinch the mysterious man's nose and turn a few circles. Of course, they didn't know that Voldemort had no nose. Gryffindor. The sorting hat shouted out Harry's sorting result, and the Gryffindor long table suddenly became a sea of joy. "We have Potter." The Weasley brothers wanted to announce the news to the world, and Dumbledore smiled with relief in the teacher's seat. There was no suspense. Ron Weasley was sorted into Gryffindor like his 5 brothers, and then it was Bernie Selwyn's turn. The chubby boy jumped onto the 4-legged stool, and the dirty-looking sorting hat moved inside his head. Bernie closed his eyes nervously, and Haley in the audience clenched her fists. "Slytherin," the sorting hat shouted. Haley breathed a sigh of relief, and her expression looked much more relaxed. "You don't want Bernie to come to Ravenclaw?" Jill asked. Haley shook her head. "Most of the Selwyn family are from Slytherin. If Bernie comes to Ravenclaw, my parents will be angry." Jill looked at her meaningfully. At this time, the sorting ceremony was over. Dumbledore stood up with a smile on his face, and after a few simple words, he announced the start of the dinner. Facing the delicious dishes made by the house elves with all their efforts, Joel felt that his stomach was mostly filled after eating 2 pieces of roast beef and roast potatoes. Haley stuffed a mouthful of lamb chops into her mouth. Seeing Joel was drinking pumpkin juice bit by bit, but not eating the sumptuous dishes on the table, she asked after chewing and swallowing the food in her mouth, "Are you full?" Joel then remembered that Haley liked to remind him to eat more whenever she sat next to him. In order to prevent her from nagging him again, Joel quickly stuffed 2 more pieces of pudding into his mouth. "No, I was just thinking about the conversion spell of object transfiguration. There are a few points that I don't quite understand." Joel made up an excuse casually. In fact, he had already figured out this problem during the summer vacation. Haley took it seriously. She put down her knife and fork and discussed it seriously with Joel. "I also studied this problem during the summer vacation. Professor McGonagall's talk is a bit too general. I think when casting a conversion spell, the caster must consider the characteristics of the object itself. Otherwise it is difficult to restore its external properties. What do you think? Please recommend." Chapter 75. First exploration of the Forbidden Forest. Joel was stunned for 2 seconds before he reacted and put down the cutlery in his hand. "You are right. The key to the transformation spell is how to change it back to its original state without changing the properties of the object itself." The two simply discussed it at the table. Once they disagreed on a certain point of view, they would ask senior students for advice or use spells to prove themselves. Eddie saw that their heads were almost together, and his tone was a bit bitter. "I'm really envious." "What are you envious of?" Alan didn't understand. "Transformation spell." Professor McGonagall said that students who don't have a good foundation in transfiguration can save the transformation spell for the 3rd year. Eddie was choked by Alan's words. "Can you speak more tactfully? I know my transfiguration grades are not good." "No, why did you digress? I'm not envious of this. I'm more worried about surgery." Alan's words made Eddie's face change. Where did he go? The two looked around, but there was no sign of surgery in the lively auditorium. Alan couldn't suppress his worries, so he left his seat and walked to the teacher's seat to tell Professor Flitwick the truth. Professor Flitwick was not surprised by the news. He reached out and patted Alan on the shoulder. "Before the start of the school term, I received a letter from Mr. Rao's family. A lot of things have happened in his family recently, so he will come to school later." After Flitwick assured that surgery himself was fine, Alan returned to his seat to share information with his roommates. Joel nodded. Maybe Grandpa Surgery's illness has become more serious. Discussing the conversion spell with Haley made Joel's brain work faster. He felt a little hungry in his stomach, so he took advantage of the last minute of the dinner to stuff 2 chicken nuggets into his mouth. Professor Dumbledore stood up again, and the huge auditorium was silent. "It seems that everyone has eaten and drunk enough. Then I will announce several important matters next," Dumbledore said. "First of all, there will be personnel changes. The new Professor Quirrell will take over Professor White's teaching position. He introduced Professor Quirrell on his right. The thin man stood up with a stiff expression and bowed to everyone. "Hello everyone, I'm Quirinus Quirrell. You can also call me Professor Quirrell." He bent down a little too much, and the purple turban wrapped around the back of his head was about to fall off. Quirrell hurriedly and clumsily fixed it, almost making a fool of himself. However, this scene was captured by the students in the audience. They did not hesitate to laugh at it. Everyone was very dissatisfied with this successor to Professor White. Eddie laughed. "Did you see how stupid Professor Quirrell is? It's like there is a cobra brought back from Arabia in his turban." The students around him echoed one after another, and even Qiu and Merita couldn't help laughing. Joel didn't laugh. Instead, he was a little scared. Eddie was really brave. What was hidden in Quirrell's turban was much more powerful than a cobra. He glanced at the teacher's seat. He didn't know if Quirrell heard Eddie's words. His face was full of tension and anxiety. Dumbledore waved and sat down immediately. Dumbledore stretched out his hands and cleared his throat. The students in the hall quieted down again. "It's the same old story. Mr. Filch asked me to remind everyone that spells are prohibited in the corridor. The selection of the Quidditch team will be held in the second week of school. The Quidditch captains of each college will organize and report to coordinate the use of the venue. Finally, I must tell everyone that anyone who does not want to encounter an accident or a painful death, please do not enter the corridor on the right side of the 4th floor." Dumbledore finally said something incoherent, and the audience looked at each other in confusion. But after Dumbledore finished his speech, the students still gave warm applause. After singing the school song with Professor Dumbledore, they could finally go back to the dormitory. This time, they no longer needed to follow the 5th year prefect to return to the tower. Everyone moved in 2s and 3s. Joel followed the crowd and left the hall. He did not return to the tower to rest, but left the castle under the cover of darkness. He first walked around the Black Lake for a while, making sure that no one was following him, before he walked towards the Forbidden Forest. When passing by Hagrid's hut, Joel tiptoed, trying to reduce the sound of his feet stepping on the grass. The dim light in Hagrid's hut shone on him through the window, casting a thin and long shadow on the grass. Hagrid seemed to be cooking in the house. Joel could smell the aroma of some kind of roasted meat when he passed by. The dark Forbidden Forest was right in front of him. Joel stepped in, and his wand had already slipped into his hand. It was dark, and Joel was afraid of attracting Hagrid and other unknown creatures, so he did not dare to turn on the illumination spell, and had to look for his target in the dark. He did a lot of homework during the summer vacation, and had a certain understanding of unicorns and holly trees. Holly trees are about 13 meters tall, with thin leathery leaves, narrow and long oval or lanceolate, gradually pointed at the top, wedge-shaped at the base, and shallow round serrations on the edges. The petals are purple or lavender, curled outward, and the fruits are oval or nearly spherical. This kind of shade-tolerant tree is not uncommon in the UK. Joel found a lot of holly trees on the outer edge of the Forbidden Forest in the dark, but it is not easy to find a holly tree with good growth and suitable for making wands. The trees here have not been maintained for a long time, and there are many broken parts on the trunks. I think they were scratched and bitten by the creatures in the Forbidden Forest. Joel took a lot of effort to find a good holly tree in the area slightly inside the Forbidden Forest. He squatted down and wanted to make a mark to facilitate his search next time. At this time, a roar came from the Forbidden Forest, as loud as thunder and stone breaking the sky, and it rushed towards him with endless power. Joel's heart trembled violently, and the roar seemed to arouse the most primitive fear in his heart. He moved faster, and took out a sky blue scarf from his arms. This was the reward they won for winning the House Cup last school year, and everyone in Ravenclaw had one. Joel used the levitation spell to hang it on the branch above the holly tree, and by the way, he made a wrap to ensure that it would not be blown away by the strong wind. Joel observed and made sure that the scarf did not look like it was hung by humans, so that if the scarf was discovered by Hagrid, who was patrolling the Forbidden Forest, he would have an excuse. After all, the wind in Ravenclaw Tower was very strong, and it was reasonable to accidentally blow the scarf into the Forbidden Forest. After doing all this, Joel left the Forbidden Forest. He was curious and afraid of the roar, but he didn't dare to go in. The Forbidden Forest was very large, and no one knew how many strange creatures had been bred in this forest in the 900 years since the school was founded. When he returned to Ravenclaw Tower, Alan and Eddie had already finished washing and were lying on the carpet fiddling with something. Joel curiously came over. Please vote for recommendation. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.